Thank you so much for tuning in to the Final Fantasy Entertainment and Podcast Network, Final Fan TV, where we do have technical difficulties, but we also have very special guest, Techno Obliterator and Drakey C from the Final Fantasy Wiki, here to talk to us about our hopes and dreams for a Final Fantasy VI remake. So when it comes to Final Fantasy VI remake, there are really just two major topics or two major questions that need to be answered. The first question is how? The second question would be, let's just get wild with it. What are your hopes and dreams? Let's go back to the first one, how. Let's start with the very important question of, do we keep it the same in the same vein as the original, but we make it prettier, we make it it looks better, like Ever Crisis from Final Fantasy VII. Of course, I'm just speculating at this point. We don't know too much about Ever Crisis, but are we thinking that it's Ever Crisis style, where you have the top down, you're looking down at the characters from the exploration style, and then you get into a battle and it goes full Final Fantasy VII remake style graphics, but you're keeping that ATB and it still feels like Final Fantasy VI? Or do we go full Final Fantasy VII remake style, fully realized 3D environments, dive into the story, we flesh out characters that didn't get enough character growth in the original Final Fantasy VI? Do we go that route? I'm gonna just bring it over to Drakey C on this one. Drakey, how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. So what I was thinking, a couple of new thoughts occurred since we had to redo this, but in terms of if I wanted to see it like Ever Crisis, keep it 2D or isometric and ATB, I do think it would go that way, because I think that Final Fantasy VI does have the potential to get a huge expanded remake like Final Fantasy VII did. I think there is like enough lore and enough story and enough characters that they could fill that with meaningful content if they expanded it like that. But I think it would maybe hurt a bit of the games. Like, it does have a sort of just nostalgic charm to it. And I think like if you go full 3D remake, keep it more like Final Fantasy 4 DS or Opera Omnia, where you have that kind of sort of style, almost chibi kind of art style, where it's still colorful and cutesy even as it's 3D. And it does occur to me actually, as you were saying, you get into a battle, like if you did the Ever Crisis where you get into a battle and you get like a different art style, it actually could. Final Fantasy VI, it would be difficult to do with that, because thinking back, it's actually unique among the games in that it has a lot of in-battle cutscenes. Like, just thinking like when Sabin and Cyan meet Gao, it's a normal battle, then you feed Gao the meat and a whole cutscene plays out in the battle screen. So not saying it couldn't work, but there will be something you'd have to keep in mind with the art direction there. But I think the best for it would be just keep it 2D or isometric, like you said, like Ever Crisis, and keep it turn-based. There are ways you could expand the battle system. Like, I personally like troubleshoot like Final Fantasy IV when it went to the after years. It was the same system, but you had like the band system. That could be something neat for Final Fantasy VI. Like, you can combine Sabin and Edgar's tools and Blitz into some unique attack or something, and that you could do all kinds of things with like a band system for Final Fantasy VI. But overall, I think like its gameplay still holds up, but the major problem with it in gameplay is that it's too easy, and that's something you can easily tweak to be better. So I'd like to keep it to the core gameplay, maybe just add a couple new technical options for it.
That's fair enough. I like that. Techno, what are your thoughts?
So guys, I'm just gonna show off my tank top again because I'm very happy with it. All right, Tifa Lockhart tank top, love it. Anyway, so yeah, it's me again. Hi, and so when I approached the idea of a Final Fantasy VI remake, I think, like Drake said, there's definitely like a certain quality and charm to the game being from the era it's from, as it has a kind of like retro quality to it. So I can definitely like understand wanting to pay homage to that and wanting to like keep that quality to it in anything that comes out afterwards, right? Because you want to like respect the original game and the quality that it had, being an SNES game that achieved a lot of things it did. So for instance, like you brought up the in-battle cutscenes. There's also like the opera scene.
Yes.
Like, the opera scene and stuff like that. These are things that like an SNES machine doing that is like just really like pushing the limits of what an SNES can do, right? So to kind of like retain some of the retro kind of charm to it, like is a very good way to pay respects to it. On the other hand, like there's a definitely a market for those games, but it's a niche market. And I think there's with 6 you could really go either way, and there's a lot of potential to give it the 7 remake kind of treatment. So if you think about splitting the parts up, World of Balance and World of Ruin, you could divide it in the same way you divide Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, where you start off with, you know, here's all the heroes coming together and meeting one another to have a big showdown against the bad guy wins, right? Second chapter, you have the bad guys now won, so we have to pick up the survivors and then take the world back. So there's really like a lot of potential to do it either way. I kind of lean more in the direction of giving it the 7 remake route, on account of the fact that I really want more people to discover Final Fantasy VI, and I really want it to become another blockbuster title for Square Enix, because I really think that like 6 did so much for gaming, and in so many ways is so ahead of its time, and I really wish more people would discover it.
Yes,
I sorry,
agree.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, it's a quick aside, because this came up the other day when I was talking to Techno. In terms of marketing their games, Square Enix needs to really do a better job, because I was just looking around like the official websites for different Final Fantasy games, and the official like North American Square Enix website for Final Fantasy IV is a single page with a couple screenshots and a story description like 3 lines long. And then you go to the Final Fantasy portal and it's like, okay, now you have like 2 paragraphs of story description, and you have little character profiles just showing their Amano artwork, not even show, which in a lot of cases don't look anything like the characters you're going to see in the game. And it's like this, as far as I did like a big tweet thread about it, but like these websites should be how you convince fans to get the game. Give us story sections, give us character profiles, give us gameplay videos. You make trailers for a lot of these remakes. Why not put them somewhere where people can see them? But and also on that, bringing the Final Fantasy VI to a bigger audience. I don't know if it's like a big widespread rumor or fan wish, or if it's just like I've seen in a couple places, compile the original 6 Nintendo Final Fantasy games for the Switch. And I think that could be awesome. And it occurred to me, there's a strong case, not just for Final Fantasy VI, but on the one, Final Fantasy 1 and 2, take the PSP versions or Android versions, port them over, they're fine. Final Fantasy 3 NES, we technically never got that. We only ever got the DS remake, and the NES version played differently. So I think that there is like, some people might be interested in the original NES version. The Final Fantasy IV, the only way you can play it now is the version that was ported was the 3D version. The original 2D version is it's on the PSP, the complete collection, and that's going away in a couple months. So you could definitely like carry that over to a compilation. And it's not even a nostalgia thing. The 2D versions just play way differently than the 3D versions. And then of course 4 and 5, of course, it's no secret, not everyone liked the graphics there, and I think there is room to give those graphics another do-over. So I think that if you take those, there's a good case to make for 4 to 6 games there. They need a remaster at the least. And if you want to compile them onto the Switch, do 6 games in one. I think a lot of people would love to see that. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, if you I don't know. I could see like an NES collection and then the SNES collection. You know what I mean? Like
I could see
Square
like
Enix doing 6 games in one. Be like, oh my god, here is.
How do we make that much money off that?
But yeah, that's very good points there. First of all, about like just Final Fantasy. A lot of people have questions about which Final Fantasy do I start with, you know, and stuff like that, and what's this game even about? There's still some confusion a little bit. I think it's kind of cleared up for now, at this point, but
I was gonna say,
order.
like, these days, if someone was getting into it, I would say 7 Remake is absolutely the best place to start.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 7 Remake or Final Fantasy 15. Those are my suggestions.
15's all right.
Yeah.
15's all right. I feel like with 7 Remake gives you just a bit of everything. Like,
Yeah.
it gives you the kind of story and the kind of characters people love. It gives you like the music people love from Final Fantasy, and it all wraps it into a nice, like, more modernized package and a more modernized battle system that people can get behind. So I feel like that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, and if you're gonna go with like, you know, that example there, how Final Fantasy 7 Remake is just, it's almost become this new I don't know, pinnacle of Final Fantasy, or, you know what I mean, like, this is the Final Fantasy that everybody wants modernized, right? So Final Fantasy 6, I feel like, in my personal opinion, I kind of go against the grain here a little bit, or I'm agreeing with Kreisman in chat. I believe that it should get the full on Final Fantasy 7 treatment, Final Fantasy 7 Remake treatment. I want to see, you know, like, just the opening. Like, if you just think about the opening of Final Fantasy 6, and if you just imagine that, like, that whole scene of just, you know, the road to Narsh, you know what I mean? Oh my god, that would just be insane in Final Fantasy 7 Remake style graphics.
I'll
And
just toss out quick. Sorry, I'll just toss out quickly. I'm not a stand for like keeping it 2D. If they like announced the trailer, Final Fantasy 6 Remake looks like Final Fantasy 7, I would be like, take my money now, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it to me.
Okay. That's
so
fair.
that's just my point. But yeah, I would be 100% down for that.
It's not completely against the grain, because I actually somewhat agree. Like, I think there's so much potential for that. There's just also potential for the other way.
It is a massive game.
With 6 you could really go either way.
Like, I'm gonna say one thing.
Okay.
Go ahead, Benny.
Modernized Final Fantasy 6 graphics. Sabin suplexing a train.
Okay, I thank you for bringing that up.
That is what everybody wants to see. That is why we want to see modernized graphics.
I've been waiting for this because I've told this to Techno. Yeah. I have in my head a vision for how you do that scene, and I'm going to describe it to you in detail because I've thought of this. We all want to see that. Let's hear it. Yes. So I'm picturing it. Okay, you do the Phantom Train, and you establish, like, it's going through these tracks to this forest, and it's like, it's just the tracks. Like, they can see the train, these glowing trees in the distance, but it's just the tracks. You step off the tracks and you're nowhere. So it's like, okay, do the train. They get to the engine. They climb up to the front of the engine, hit the switch. The train is revealed to be sapient. And then you do the boss fight with the Phantom Train with them climbing on the outside of the Phantom Train. And it's like steam exhaust shooting out and ghosts flying around as they fight the engine. You beat the boss. Train slows to a halt. The three jump off, like, guess we keep following the tracks, start walking down the tracks. Train's engines slowly start to creep back up again. They hear it starting behind them, and they start running. Phantom Train's picking up speed. It's closing the gap. Sabin looks back at it, like just turns on, like, braces himself, catches the cow catcher that starts pushing him back along the tracks. His heels dig in. You see Sabin's hands shift, grip the bottom of the cow catcher, and mighty fling, leap into the air with the train. And ahead of him, Shadow and Cyan just stop and stare and look up above them as the Phantom Train sails over their heads with Sabin gripping the cow catcher. Let's Go does a superhero landing in front of them. Train lands ahead of them, clatters back onto the tracks, keeps chugging off into the distance, and Sabin's just like, well, that wasn't so bad, was it? I would pay money for this. This is how, in my opinion, it would be glorious. I put thought into this, as you can tell. I want it, and it would be so amazing.
Kreisman in chat said, I just cried a little.
Can I, to anybody out there who is really good at modding, can you guys make a mod for Final Fantasy VII where Sephiroth doesn't summon Meteor, he summons Sabin coming from outer space, suplexing a train?
Suplexing all the planets on the way out.
Perfect.
Oh
thing
man,
is,
that is
honestly,
insane.
I
I
would
just
say
imagine
Supernovas.
Avengers.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just imagine like you're like when you said Avengers and just like now I'm just like picturing like Sabin like like you're just like kicking up all the railway as it's just sliding and like the ground's cracking and then just stops the train. Oh my god, dude.
I'm now
so Sabin
picturing
would be
on your
Hulk.
left when Sabin
On
coming
your
out
left.
riding it. Sabin comes out of the portal riding the train and just picks it up and suplexes it on Thanos.
That would
So-
just be insane, dude.
So Sabin would be
way-
Hulk, right?
By the
Sabin
way,
would
Sabin
be-
smash.
Isn't he though?
Isn't
Yeah.
he-
if
You wouldn't like Sabin when he's angry.
if 7 Remake does not let me suplex a giant robot with Tifa, then I will take back every good thing I've ever said about 7 Remake. It will go from a game I love to a trash bastardization of the original if you don't let me do that.
I think they'll keep that. Like you can launch enemies in Remake now, couldn't you? Like different enemies, you could launch them into the air. I think they got to keep that.
Yeah.
Someone's saying they clipped the
pen.
pen.
With Dolphin Blur, but like they didn't include Tifa's Meteor Strike yet. When they do, I want to suplex Ruby Weapon. I want to suplex Pride and Joy. If you don't let me do that, I'll take back everything I've ever said, and I'm not working on the wiki ever again.
And I'm not working. Oh my god, there it is. Hey yo, Vincent Graymore just
Square
clipped that.
Enix, I hope you heard that.
Your word
You
is
have an
is
obligation
now
now.
eternal. Oh man, so actually let's stay on this iconic. There's so many iconic scenes from Final Fantasy VI. So if we stay on the iconic suplexing of the train. Now if we go to the chibi style or the Ever Crisis style, is it going to hit the way that we had just like the way you had just described, Drakey, like that insanely awesome like sequence of events that you described, or if it's chibi style and like, oh yeah, he just suplexed the train, and it almost feels like for me personally, I would feel like it's just not going. It hits because it's a nostalgic moment, whereas this would be like this is a new gaming moment. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I feel like if it was chibi, it would feel way too cartoony.
Yeah,
If
and I
it
think I
was-
misspoke saying that. Because I'm picturing like Opera Omnia in terms of like how 3D games look now, but it is more size. But I really think it would be more like Final Fantasy IV. Like if you
Okay,
did like
I
Final
got
Fantasy IV
Yeah.
DS,
Or-
like
Yeah, I'm
not like
thinking that too.
hyper realistic like 15 and 7 were. That's
Which-
I think 6 maybe not quite that far.
And I guess this pertains to that as well. When I was looking through Steam for all of the versions of Final Fantasies I could download, 1 and 2 aren't on Steam. 3 is the first one you can buy on Steam. And then the only version of 4 you can't even, or 5, I think it's 5, you can't even play the original version of it anymore, like you said. And I personally like 4 and 5, but I don't like the newer art style of it, so it makes me not want to play it. So
Yeah.
I mean, that might be somebody's, like, to me it's too cartoony. Like, do you guys remember a PS2 game from a long time ago? I think it was called like Okage Shadow King or Okage Shadow King.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Vaguely.
You remember it was like one of the first PS2 games to come out when PS2 was new. It was very cartoony, and it took me out of it. And it was kind of the same art style. So I think if it was done in the Final Fantasy IV arts, like the newer art style, I feel like that part would just be too cartoony. Kefka might be too cartoony to be taken seriously as a bad guy, you know? Like,
Well,
there's just certain things about it that I personally wouldn't
Just
like.
wondering, are you talking about Final Fantasy IV, the 3D version? Making sure that's what you're saying there?
Yeah, the one with
Okay.
Kane Highwind. Is that 5?
yeah, that's,
that's
cool.
4.
No, that's 4, but I
Oh,
mean,
that's
like,
4.
you're
Yeah,
talking
that's-
about the 3D version, not the 2D version, right?
Yeah, I like the
Okay.
2D version.
Okay.
Right, so I think the first thing I have to say to that, if we were to consider 6 a remake from the perspective of keeping it more in the like retro style, I think there's another option, which is to do something similar to what Octopath Traveler's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
where it has 2D sprites on a mostly 3D background. Like I think there's a lot of potential to do it that way, and if anything, like it feels to me like Octopath Traveler is kind of trying to be the style of Final Fantasy VI already.
Yeah, I've seen. I haven't played it, but I've seen screenshots, and it looks very similar in
Right.
terms of art direction.
Right, exactly. And because one of the biggest complaints against the new ports for the mobile version is and full disclosure, I actually started with the mobile version, right? So I know he's shaking his head, but
I'll cut in when you're done. I'll let you go.
okay, cool. But like I actually like started with that version. So like the biggest complaint people had with it is, like you said, because the art style is more bright and cartoony. As a result of it, it just feels too colorful for the type of story Final Fantasy VI is trying to tell. They feel like compared to the original sprites and the color palette that the sprites had, the like modernized. I guess it's modernized. The new version in the ports feels like it doesn't gel with what Final Fantasy VI was trying to accomplish, whereas it does more with 5. So I think there's like when we say if we were to do a remake in the style of Final Fantasy IV, that I don't think we would necessarily do it in exactly the same way the 4 did it. I think it would just we'd do something similar, like we'd have a similar thing with like, so if you've ever played Dissidia Opera Omnia, the mobile game, I think that's what Drake was alluding to. I think we would do it something within that style, right? It's just the gameplay would be like Ever Crisis-ish, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's absolutely important that any remake of 6 retain the fact that it had the color palette that it did for the reasons that it did, because I feel like the mobile ports didn't really understand that.
I also thought it also occurred to me as you were talking that like, well, what if you did it like a 2D version, but then you just had like FMVs? Like that could be, maybe that could work. Like for the important critical moments, like the train, you have them like an FMV, and you keep the consistent art style, and that could work maybe. But what you were saying with the art style of the mobile port, I ripped sprites from the mobile port from the wiki, and I haven't played it myself. I'd actually like to, just for the sake of playing it, but I've seen videos, I've seen all over it. And the thing that I find interesting is when you look at the party member sprites on their own, they look great. Like especially characters like Kefka and Gogo basically got they got entirely new sprites that look more like their mono art and their SD art, and they look good. And most of the other characters, like they're not awesome. Like everyone kind of stands rigidly straight with their arms straight at their side, which looks weird, but for the most part, the sprite looks good. It's when you put them against the detailed background and the detailed enemies that they don't look right. And especially when you have the portraits too. And I remember, I think I went to the Techno at this, so I'll say it anyway. Realm especially, she has that huge turban or hat or whatever you want to call it. And on her sprite, it's pink, and in her portrait, it's purple. And you didn't have and like, I get maybe you keep it that way because of the nostalgia value, but on the other hand, you clearly didn't have a problem giving Tara's portrait green hair when she was blonde originally. So I think the problem with the mobile port is that I don't know what creative process went in behind the scenes, but I think there was a lack of oversight in terms of art direction, because on their own, the art pieces and the sprite work look good. It's when you put it all together, they don't gel properly. And I think that's what's lacking.
I think Tara was always intended to have green hair, but I'm not 100% on that. Oh, she was always? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, well, like they gave it to a sprite, but I mean, like in terms of they recolored Tara's hair green, why couldn't they recolor Realm's hat to match her sprite? Like, and like Celis is based on her mono art, and you can see part of like her armband or arm covering, whatever you'd want to call it, which is yellow, and it's a minor thing, but she doesn't have that in the sprite. So the portrait is like a close-up of the character. The portrait should match what the character looks like. And in this day and age, you don't have technical limitations that you need to keep in mind. There's no reason you couldn't do that, unless there's some sort of time crunch, or someone's being lazy. I don't know, or someone's just not overseeing things and not noticing this.
Right. Yeah. I think one thing that the mobile parts have that unequivocally looks great is the enemy sprites.
Yes.
The enemy sprites look fantastic.
They do.
And that is because Final Fantasy VI has really good enemy design, right? I mean, like, you look at the behemoth from Final Fantasy VI, it looks so much better than any other version of the behemoth, right? Just as an example, like, 6 has just phenomenal enemy design. So, like, these are all things, and, like, these are all things that, like, a full remake of the game could really just take advantage of this stuff. That, like, this stuff was, like, mind-blowing back in 1994, right? We're now into, there you go. Like, nice screenshot, yeah. We're now in 2021. Like, imagine, like, I just really think that more people need to discover how great this game is.
Yeah.
Like, that's like the bottom line for me. It's like, I just think this game goes so underappreciated for how good it is.
I was thinking you wanted to talk about great enemy design, the Warring Triad and Ultima weapon. Like, the Warring Triad, we've seen them in full 3D in Final Fantasy 14. They look incredible. You look at the Warring Triad in Final Fantasy 14, like, I was in awe when I saw that. These things look amazing.
And that's a good point too, that Final Fantasy 14 is a brilliant way that they can take things from past Final Fantasy games that have never been modernized in 3D, like Emerald Weapon, Ruby Weapon, Diamond Weapon. They all look phenomenal in Final Fantasy 14. And so taking things from, like, Final Fantasy 6, putting them in the Final Fantasy 14, and then gauging the community's reaction is a great way to see, like, is this going to hit, or is this going to fall short? So that they should probably do more stuff like that. If they're going to remake 6, they should put more 6 into 14 and kind of see where that lands.
They put 6 into 14 in the form of, they had the Dancing Mad boss, that was almost reason enough on its own for me to subscribe to 14. If I had the time and money, I would absolutely be, like, playing 14, if only for that.
I saw that. It was magnificent. And
it's incredible, man. Like,
and that's, like, you look at those isolated incidents and you think the entire game looking like this.
Right.
On the one hand, it would have to be on the scale of Final Fantasy VII Remake. It would have to be episodic because it's huge. It would be a massive undertaking, but it would be so awesome and so beautiful.
And that brings up another point of the whole episodic thing. It's no surprise we're all getting older, and with the rate that these games come out, if they were, because they're probably not going to start remaking Final Fantasy VI until Final Fantasy VII Remake is probably done, because they probably want to put all of their resources into that, which is understandable. So now we're talking, like, we might not get a complete version of Final Fantasy VI Remake until we're, like, in our 50s, 60s, and that makes me.
They have three development teams that can they can alternate there. So with the main division taking care of Remake, and then what is it, third business unit taking care of Final Fantasy 16. There's an opening, you know what I mean? There is a, you have,
but is it going to take a hit?
Yeah, and then plus the marketing might be a little bit confusing if you have Final Fantasy 6 Remake, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and they're both only just a one Roman numeral difference there. You get a little jumbled, but, like,
that's something that still confuses people. Like, where do you start? Are these games all connected? No. Like, some people are still confused about that. not
It's
always
true.
the thing you
I
know.
think with regards to that, like that does bring up the point of the fact that like I think any 6 remake would probably not be done by the original development team.
Well,
Like,
Probably not.
Sakaguchi is over at Mistwalker, so
they were
Mhm.
able to bring everyone back for 7 remake, but I think
Yeah.
they would not be capable of doing that with 6 remake, especially because I believe Sakaguchi was more involved with 6 than he was with 7. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I think he
Mhm.
was.
No,
Yeah.
he did. It was him and Katase as like the kind of the two-headed development of that game. It was him and
And
Katase.
Hiroyuki Ito.
Oh
Huh?
yeah.
Ito as well.
Is he?
Mm.
I think he's left Square Enix too, hasn't he? I don't recall.
Well,
off the
I
top of my
mean,
head.
I don't think we've heard anything from him in a long time. We don't
Yeah.
really know what he's up to these days. But
Yeah.
he directed 6, 9. Well, he co-directed 6, but he co-directed 6. He directed 9, and he directed 12. And many people still view these as the best 3 Final Fantasies,
Yeah.
along with 7, of course. And
Mhm.
Oh, absolutely.
But-
Real quick with chat, chat, while we're talking here, Vinny's going to go through and pick out any questions that you guys may have wanted to ask us or brought up any topics. But feel free to bring up any topic that you would like us to discuss regarding the Final Fantasy VI remake, or a potential Final Fantasy VI remake. Just bring it up, and we'll be more than happy to kind of discuss where we would like to see it go and stuff like that. Vincent Graymore says Katase will retire after Final Fantasy VII remake. It's a good point. Katase's kind of tied up with that. This would have to be with a completely like new development team for sure. I don't think you can get the original guys back for this one.
Which is not inherently a bad thing. Like
Nomura wasn't like super involved with 6 either.
Yeah.
Because I saw Nomura will probably not take over, and Nomura was not super involved with 6. This was like one of his first gigs.
Well, so Nomura did the enemy design, and he designed one character, and that one character is Setzer.
Which one it was.
I think he designed Shadow too. I heard
Shadow
and Setzer.
Okay,
it's a very Nomura character.
Yeah.
Drake worked on those pages, not me. But anyway, so Nomura did those 2 character designs. Guess which is the one Final Fantasy VI representative in Kingdom Hearts?
I guess you're right.
Well, he has silver hair
Very
and wears the long black coat. Of course he's gonna be in Kingdom Hearts. Like, that's their shtick, it's like a trend in there.
But that's like so. I think it's not inherently a bad thing that they would be forced to make it with a new development team. If you look at, for instance, like if you look at games like Bravely Default and Octopath, and now, Fantasian was made by Sakaguchi, but it's just proof that like you can make games in the style of Final Fantasy that pay a lot of homage to these old games that are still high quality games. Like you don't need to bring back the original people for them. Like, even with 7 remake, they brought the original people for that, and some people hate it.
Yeah.
Like, so I have,
which is a good topic actually.
I was gonna piggyback off that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I think so. As what you just said, they brought the original people back for 7 remake, and like you said, a lot of people do hate it. I think what would determine if 6 would even get a remake depends largely on the success of the concluded Final Fantasy VII remake. If it's widely accepted or if it's widely talked down about. If people don't like how the remake turns out, then they might not even try and remake 6 unless they absolutely promise and deliver like a 1-to-1 ratio with modernized graphics. I don't think, because people would probably lose trust in saying.
Well, how would you feel? How would you? I'm gonna kind of direct this one at Drakey just a little bit. Sorry, Vinny, to cut you off.
Oh, you're good. No, it's fine.
Very curious. Drakey, the Final Fantasy VI obviously is your favorite game of all time, I'm imagining.
Probably. I haven't sat down and thought it over, but it's absolutely in the top 5, probably top 3. So yeah.
Okay. So how would so now that we know, we have this idea of what a remake means to Square, what would your thoughts process be here if they took Final Fantasy VI and then gave it a similar treatment, like, hey, we don't want you to know what's going to happen next. We're kind of changing things around. Is 6 kind of old enough, SNES enough to where it's kind of like, it's like, okay, I'm okay with you fleshing out the story a little bit. I'm okay with you adding more things, maybe changing things around a little bit. Or would you be more like, please don't touch the story. If you want to flesh out certain characters like Yeti, please do so. But don't mess up my story. How would you feel?
I would want to keep it to a broad outline, but I think there is room for changing. I'll toss out on more big changes. I haven't tried it, but there's a mod. There is a mod for Final Fantasy VI I'm aware of. I believe it's called Divergent Paths, and the idea behind it is they had to do world map work for this, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. The idea is that it starts from the 3 scenarios, and the only major difference in how they begin is Edgar leaps into the water after Sabin to try and rescue him. And where it diverges from there is the 3 scenarios, because Ultros still knocked the raft on off course. Bannon and Terra wash up on the Veld, and they get help from Gal to get back to Nosh. Sabin and Edgar wash up near Dharma, and they do the sequence where they go through the Phantom Train. Because I specifically remember there's a sequence where like Edgar's on the Phantom Train as they try to figure out how to cross the roof, and he's like, and I forgot my grappling hook too, which was kind of cute. And then they also had Locke scenario, but it was expanded with a little storyline, and Shadow was added to it as a temporary character. So things like that, where you shuffle the story around a bit to give characters different, more focus if they had more, or just so Sabin's scenario doesn't seem so huge compared to the other 2. I'm okay with things like that, like Strago especially. Like if you're gonna change, like if you want to talk major discussion, Strago is so probably the most undeveloped character, or like one of the most underdeveloped. Why not have him be one of the first ones Celes finds in the World of Ruin, and then he kind of gets a spotlight traveling with her. But and also in terms of expand and just minor ways you can expand it, this I kind of took notice of this when I was modding the game. A lot of the small things in Final Fantasy VI in terms of coding are surprisingly complex. And like the one thing I remember that was surprisingly complex is the security checkpoint in Nosh. And it's a minor thing. It's like it's so simple that you can't even really call it a puzzle, I don't think. But it is surprisingly complex, because at every intersection, the game checks for your location, checks which way your character is facing to see where you came from, so it can tell if you went the wrong way. Then it creates those eight stars and sets them on a path surrounding you, and checks what happens when you press A and what star is in front of you. So that little sequence takes up a huge amount of code. And in story terms, like when the party meets Rama and Zozo, and some characters have different dialogue specific to them, the game, it's like, okay, who's going to talk here? Check who's in the party. Is Locke in the party? Okay, jump to this point in the event and load this different dialogue caption. Locke's not in the party? Is Edgar in the party? Jump to this other event and load that dialogue caption. And every time there's a scene with optional dialogue like that, the game is doing a check on that. So I think like really what it is because they stopped doing that at a certain point. And I think the reason is they either ran out of time or they just ran out of room in the code.
Yeah.
So I think like a remake, there are so many areas in the World of Ruin where you could do that. Sabin and Shadow could talk to Cyan's family when you go into the dreamscape. Edgar or even Terra could say stuff to Locke when they find him in the Phoenix Cave. Other characters could have specific dialogue when meeting other characters, because and I'd love to see more of that, all those optional conversations where if a character is here and they have something unique that they could input on events, they do that. It would add so much replayability. It would strengthen the bonds of the characters more and give them all more time to develop and grow. And I would love to see that all over a remake. Remake, go nuts with that. I'd love it.
Very
nice.
nice.
Answer the question as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Final Fantasy VI is actually my second favorite game of all time.
Hey,
it's below only Metal Gear Solid 3. And so here's my answer for if I would mind if they did a similar 7 remake thing where like at the end of the first part, they're like, you don't actually know what's going to happen next. We might change things up. We might not. Wait and see and find out, right? Well, my answer to that is I have the same answer to that as I do with 7 Remake, which is as long as it's good, I don't care, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing is like I don't want to touch too much on 7 Remake now,
Yeah.
Right.
but my personal standpoint on it was, well, I loved 90 to 95% of the first game. Stands to reason I'm gonna love 90 to 95% of the incoming games. So if I had the same feeling with Final Fantasy VI, where I'm like, oh, I really love the game. I don't know about the ending though. That's a little weird. Like then I would probably still be like, but I'm still hyped for the next ones.
Mhm.
But like what happened to me with 7 Remake was, it's funny, like I don't know if I told this story on the last stream, but basically what happened was I'd read spoilers about it. When you work on a wiki for a series of games, you cannot avoid spoilers.
Mhm.
Simply not possible. It sucks. We love the game so much, but we can't not spoil ourselves because someone's gonna add it and we need to check
Oh
everything.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so basically, I read the spoiler about it and I was just like, what the fuck? That is stupid as hell. That is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever read. Right.
Mhm.
And then I actually got to it in the game myself. And I was like, oh, okay. That's not
Yeah.
nearly
Oh,
as bad as the spoiler
Yeah.
made it out to be. Like, it was still like, I didn't think you needed that Sephiroth fight. But oh well, it's not nearly
Yeah.
as bad
Yeah.
as it had been made out. So I imagine I would have the same feeling with 6. Then again, I don't know how you end a Final Fantasy 6 entry any differently from, you know, Kafka Destroys the World.
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of
a
big
good, that's
cliffhanger
great.
in itself. I just don't see how you end it any differently from Kafka Destroys the World. Like, as far as how much they want to change up, as long as they, I have the same opinion as with 7 Remake. As long as they respect the theme of Final Fantasy VI, which is, and I'll touch on it more, right? The theme about overcoming despair, the theme about overcoming tragedy, themes like that. As long as you respect that theme, I don't mind how much you want to change it up. But with that said, I don't see how you can possibly make a story about Final Fantasy VI where the first entry doesn't end with Kafka Destroys the World. And also, like Drake said, there was so much potential for like shuffling things around or changing things slightly here and there. As long as the events themselves happen, I don't mind what you shuffle around.
Mhm.
Like again, like with 7 Remake, for instance, like if they were to do that, I wouldn't mind. If they do that with 6 Remake, I wouldn't mind. But like if they do stupid shit, like if for instance in 7 Remake they say like, oh, instead of killing Aerith, now we're gonna kill Tifa. I'll be like,
There
what
would
the
be
fuck?
riots in the streets.
They're
Yeah,
so
people would.
stupid. Yeah, because like imagine if they made a Spider-Man story where they said, instead of killing Gwen Stacy, we're killing Mary Jane. You'd be like,
That was the first
what
Tobey
fuck?
Maguire.
That's just stupid. Like it's
It's fun.
just cheap writing, right? But
Yeah.
so if they get to the end of 7 Remake and stupid shit hasn't happened, you know, I have enjoyed 90 to 95% of it, I will say, okay, you can give the same treatment for 6, right? But if they fuck it up completely, then I'll say, all right, look, I don't trust you with 6 unless you keep the exact same things. And
That's
like,
fair.
I don't even trust you to expand certain parts of the dialogue.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to say on this, because I don't want to make this too much about 7 Remake, but
Right.
I
I'll
brought
just
this
toss
up
out a
last
quick.
I brought this up last stream, but like there were some changes of 7 Remake that I thought were very good narrative changes. So for instance, like when you go to the Shinra building and the reason you're able to infiltrate is because you have Mayor Domino helping you out, right? In the original game, the reason you're able to infiltrate is because they cut to a cutscene with the guy sleeping at the desk. That's lazy writing. Like, and same with like same with they add little details in, like, oh well, the reason why we let you bomb the place despite you being a group of 4 people and you know not being a very like well-funded group, the reason you were able to bomb such an important building is because we kind of wanted you to bomb it.
Yeah,
it into our propaganda. So like little narrative changes like that are stuff I'd be happy to see for a 6 remake.
That's fair.
And I'm just gonna toss out quickly. You mentioned you don't know how you end the game better for Remake. Here's how you do that. have Kefka destroy the world, do the same thing. You end the game with a fade in of Sid on the solitary island. He looks at the figure in the bed, and you can't see who it is, but Sid says, I hope he wakes up soon. It's not Celes. Who's on the solitary island? Because like just leave it on that cliffhanger. If it's not Celes, that the story has to change now.
And then that's how you bring that conversation.
Yeah, that conversation. Again, like if you make changes like that, I wouldn't mind. Like stuff like that, I'd be happy to see if it's done well, right?
Yeah, you could be a different character. Story could go the same way, but it'd be different and it could be better. Like maybe it's Strago and that's Strago's time to shine. You know, I don't think that would work, but maybe it may prove me wrong.
I think also like with 7 Remake, what we've seen is a lot of the people who enjoy it are people who have never played the original before at all. Like a lot of people. So obviously they're more open to change because you know they don't have the same attachment to the first one. With 6 Remake, if you were going for the full 3D style, the full let's make this a big blockbuster game, then you'd be more able to get away with stuff like that on account of the fact that you have a much broader audience that you're catering to. But if you're making a more traditional style, a more retro-ish style that is intended for a niche market, you really can't do stuff like that. And that's just because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I feel like 6's fan base, as hardcore and niche as it is a little more rabid than 7's fan base. Like
sometimes, I've seen some, and like you said, like I know some fans, like if they change the story significantly from 6, a lot of Final Fantasy 6 fans, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them probably would have violently hate it, but it wouldn't be as big as 7, and it wouldn't be as controversial. A lot of the new people probably wouldn't even notice or even mind. So very good point there.
That's because 6's fan base, like even though I think it's a little more rabid, it's not as big as 7's fan base. But also, like we brought up mods earlier, mods that change the story around and stuff. Like the 6 fan base I know of, seems to love stuff like that.
Yeah, like so, there's the mod one that makes Shadow a temporary playable character, so General Leo can be a full character and he has his own storyline in the World of Ruin. We asked for that and we made it happen because we wanted it. We've been changing the story in the game for years.
What's so how would you guys feel about Kefka getting a little bit more of a fleshed out story?
This is
a redemption arc
I've been waiting for since the first stream I was invited to. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Oh boy. Okay. I'll let Techno run away.
Kefka's redemption arc with the
Palazzo is the best villain in any video game, and I'm not accepting another answer. Right.
I'm not accepting another answer.
Any alternative answer to that. Right. So Kefka is such a great villain because he fits with the game so well thematically, so well aesthetically, so well in gameplay, because that boss is just such an impressive thing for an SNES. Like, here's the thing. Like, I mean, what do you want from a villain to be? Like, you want them to be threatening, you want them to be entertaining, you want them to be interesting. Kefka is all 3 of those, right? Kefka has some of the most, and I admit that this part is specifically from the Ted Woolsey translation in the English version. They didn't get this in Japanese, but Kefka has some of the most memorable quotes, like Sabarina, you'll pay for that, like stuff like that. And he has, and let me think of other ones, like read my lips, mercy is for wimps. There's a reason oppose rhymes with dispose. If they stand in your way, kill them. Like Kefka.
So this is what Techno spent his time on. Phantom Train. Techno spent Kefka.
He has some of the most memorable quotes, right? I mean, I compared Final Fantasy VI to Endgame. You think about like Kefka's memorable quotes are up there with some of Thanos's quotes, right? Yeah. And you think of like Kefka also has the best the best, like, I'm so angry at you guys that you didn't include Dancing Mad in your top 10. But like, it has the best theme, right? The best boss theme. Because it's just the way it slowly builds up to showcase his insanity.
Yeah.
And it's the way it slowly builds up until the it's the way it builds up to that to create to generate the excitement that it does, right? Which just really gives you such a great like introspective into who this guy is. So like Kefka is someone who has, much like the rest of the main Final Fantasy VI cast, he has basically gone through tragedy and gone through struggling to, he has the same struggle with Terra, which is like, Kefka and Terra both struggle to understand emotion and they both struggle to understand love. Well, whereas Terra's response to that is, I want to find what love is and I want to find something to keep fighting for. Kefka's is, I don't get it.
Someone had
so
to
fuck it. Maybe it's just bullshit. I'm gonna destroy the whole world. Like, and it's just like, it's just the fact that like the big contrast Kefka has to the heroes at the end. So like, I guess it's kind of cheesy, but it's so thematically like brilliant that I don't care. It's just the fact that like Kefka's standing up against these 14 people that just defy his entire worldview. His worldview is just like everything in life is temporary. There's no point in any of it. Like it amounts to nothing, you know.
Very nihilistic.
Yeah, he just leans into the nihilism aspect of it, right? And that's because like basically everyone has been through a certain tragedy in a point in their lives, right? And Kefka's response to that is just pure nihilism, whereas the other guys have said they've coped with it in different ways, right? They've all found a way, they found something to hold on to and live for, right? And so it's just to see his worldview opposed by these 14 people at the very end and juxtaposed in the way that it is, right? And he's confronted with this. He's confronted with them explaining things to live for, right? And then he's just like, blah, you sound like lines from a self-help book. And then just opposes them, right? And they have to like defeat this evil god, you know. I just think that's such a powerful thing, right? Because when you think about like, this is a game from 1994, and this is really covering topics like topics that are still, if anything, more relevant today, like topics of like depression and mental health and stuff like that. By defeating Kefka, you're defeating the dark place that you can go to when you have a certain tragedy that you go through in your life. By defeating Kefka, you're destroying that which embodies like the worst parts of you, right? Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful theme, you know. Like I mentioned, like in the last podcast, I talked about why Tifa is my second favorite. Kefka's my favorite, if anything, for the exact opposite reasons. Whereas I find Tifa so inspiring, right? Yeah. Because she pushes through, like when you've gone through like such a bad place in your life, and she's able to push through all that. Kefka's the opposite, because he shows you, he's like a warning sign of what you could become. And I just think like when you consider all of that, how thematically great he is, how narratively great he is, and how much they did considering the screen time he had, how they make him entertaining, memorable, well-developed, right? I just think there's no villain better in games. Yeah. That's just my humble,
especially there's a lot of moments that could really hit harder in a remake, like such as the poisoning the water.
Yeah.
Like that was such a dramatic moment, but all you got in the original was, you know, you got the sprites kind of just, you know, dropping down. But like if you do that in a remake, oh my god.
Right.
That moment right there.
Like a brutal murderer. He's like he's just vile. He's just the worst.
Yeah.
Right. But you see also how he got to that place.
I'm just gonna toss out quickly. I had actually just off the top, one time I had the thought, like, if you did a remake, maybe modify the events so like Sabin and Shadow have to like stop soldiers transporting like barrels or caskets of poison or whatever, and they stop him. But Kefka's like, whatever, and he just goes to the river, puts his hands in it, and uses his magic to poison it.
Oh,
You were never gonna stop him. He was gonna do this, even if he had to do it himself. I think
That'd be
that could
pretty good.
work. Like maybe give
Keep the
players a hope
surprise.
spot, and like, we stopped him. No, you haven't, and he's gonna do it personally, and he's going to laugh while he's doing it because that's who Kefka is.
And
Yeah.
it's that's a great comparison, because if you have a lot of small moments like that throughout the game, it heavily leans into the whole, you're not stopping Kefka from destroying the world when it turns into the world of ruin. You know, like all those little like you stopped him, but he still poisoned the water. And then you try and stop him, but he still moves those pillars. He still destroys the world, and it just leads into his character where he's a bad guy who sets out to do something, and he does what he says he's gonna do.
I love that about 6 so much. Like, and I love that you brought up the Infinity War Endgame comparison, because
that is a perfect comparison.
Yeah, it's so good, man. And yeah, so to have a villain that actually does what he says he's gonna do, and then like actually wins, is just so cool. And once again, just another reason why people need to play 6. So if you have this remake, guys, and I know we touched on it earlier. You said there's no way that you could see this game ending, the best place to end it with part 1 would be before the World of Ruin. Part 2 would be the World of Ruin. Now I had up earlier the map of Final Fantasy VI. And I guess it kind of goes into the question of what we have to go. You have to start from the very beginning. The very first question is like, is this going to be fully realized like Final Fantasy VII Remake, or is it going to be Ever Crisis? Now, so if it's going to be fully realized like Final Fantasy VII Remake was, that's when you get into the point of like, this world is pretty massive. But what I've noticed when I looked at the map, if I can bring it back up, I'm still in Kefka art, my bad. But so when you bring up the map for Final Fantasy VI, the World of Balance, it's quite huge, but there's also narrow corridors. Basically, there's mountain ranges everywhere that kind of keep you restrained to where you need to be. And I think that's a great way of being able to do it if you're going to go fully realized like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we don't even know how the open world's going to be there. But it could probably be more open area like Final Fantasy 14, and kind of keep it kind of focused but open at the same time. If they go that route, open area route, I could see them potentially getting up to the point where the World of Ruin, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in between. So how would you guys feel about, and as we talked about it earlier, there are optional episodes that you can do for the characters. What if you get the main story up to a certain point, and then DLC is kind of released to tide you over until like their episode DLC? It's got to be free.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you clarified.
It would have to be free, right? Like,
I would not. If they like took a known game and cut it up and said pay us to play the rest as optional, I'd be like,
yeah, that would be kind of rough.
This is where I'm going to use the colorful language now. I'm not going to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Intergrade.
That'd be my reaction.
You have to pay for Intergrade.
I ain't.
You have to pay for.
I don't have a PS5 yet.
I paid full price for Intergrade and Serpent.
Yeah, me too. I was like, it's all good. I'll give them all my money, but I'm just saying, like, there's.
But the reason I did that is because I bought the physical copy of the base version.
Oh,
and I was like, actually, I hate physical copies. So I bought the full digital copy of Integrate. I was like, I may as well. But yeah, I agree. Like, don't cut up an existing game, right? Yeah. Instead, like, if you want to expand an existing game, that's one thing. Just don't cut it up.
Yeah.
And sell us the different parts.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking, you mentioned you were looking at the World of Balance map. Something that really comes to mind, like, I know the game, I can just picture the world map in my head. And I'm just thinking, like, yeah, the world is huge. There's a lot of empty space. And like, you think like the journey from Kolingen and Figaro to Jador is just a long walk. The journey from where Sabin washes up to Dharma is just a long walk. And like even the southern continent, if you don't like, a lot of it's only 4 cities, or like 4 cities, like 3 cities plus the Imperial base, and there's a lot of empty space between them. So actually, like, it's a holdover from the old style. You know, you need that empty space, let players level grind and fight their way through it. It's part of the genre. If you did a remake and cut out the empty space and like have characters basically like fast travel point A to point B, that could work. I could see that.
Well, but also like with the empty space thing, it's kind of weird, and like 7 has the same thing with it. Like when you go to Jador and they're all like, oh, you know, we really love to go to the opera house. The opera is like such a great which makes sense because Jador's full of a bunch of rich bastards. Like makes sense that they love opera. But then you look at like the opera is like way down on the map.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, that would be like 20,000 something, not that much.
Like a 10-day journey.
Miles apart.
Yeah. And then you figure there's the monsters around there.
Yeah, like through the monsters, like how are these guys going to the opera?
Well, that's why only the rich can go. They need to afford the bodyguards and the transport.
The airship. Everybody takes the flying casino.
If Shadow, I could actually see that. You do the scenario where like Setzer Ferries runs an airship ferry from the opera house to Jador. That could work for, you want to talk story changes. That could be interesting.
That makes sense.
There you go. So like, yeah, here's the world map right here. I brought it up. And as you can see, like I said, I mean, you're going from, this is the beginning of the game. You go to Farago down here. Yeah, there's not a lot of open area, because this is all mountain ranges right here.
Yeah.
In here. So yeah, like I mean, this is very possible. It's very possible, but then you'd have to fully realize like these cities like Farago. Or these you know,
which would be great, because like I love Fagara. It's a great location. Like I'd love to see more of Fagara. Like,
that would be amazing.
I guess this is kind of touching on the question from previously, but I would definitely prefer a Dragon Quest XI, Final Fantasy 12 style of having zones, like different zones, and then the Veld could be its own zone. So you get to the Veld and suddenly the music changes, and then you like Gal can run off or come back and whatever. Like just like stuff like that would just make a lot of sense to me. I think it's really hard to say definitively how it would look, considering I haven't yet seen the later parts of 7 Remake, but I can't imagine I would want a 6 Remake to be much different from whatever they end up doing. Unless, again, they completely fuck it up, in which case, don't.
I would want the Final Fantasy 7 Remake treatment, maybe not with the story.
Right, but like, also, like, one thing this actually gives the remake a 6 Remake a chance to improve on, Death Gaze. Death Gaze is so bad in the original.
Oh, yes.
Like, I mean,
like he could actually be flying around like Ultima Weapon was.
Yeah, exactly. Like the way 7 did it was way better than how 6 did it. Like, in 6, you can just occasionally maybe run into Death Gaze or not. Like, oh, you go around on the map several times, like looking for Death Gaze, you don't find him. Whatever, I'll go grind for a bit. Okay,
yeah,
I've died. A few of my characters have died. I'm on low HP. Let me go back and quickly find an inn. Oh no, Death Gaze. I'm dead.
I remember, like, I would like set my airship to like go left to right, but on a little slight angle, and then just hold a. I could feel myself getting older, just flying around. Where is he? That was so awful.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another thing too. You'd have to get to the airship, but that's a question that we would have to be able to answer after we see what they do with Remake, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, because it's like, when you get the airship, like that's like I said, Final Fantasy 7 Remake question. But when you get the airship, like the Highwind, or in this case, Final Fantasy 6 airship, how are you going to be able to explore that entire world? One thing that I noticed in Final Fantasy 7 Remake is when they showed the meteor coming down, and they showed the world, I was like, oh my God, that's a lot bigger of a world than I thought it was going to be. Like, that's a huge world. There's no way they can make that open world now. Like, I don't think they can make an open world Final Fantasy VII. Then again, PS5 and next gen consoles might be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what would this is pure speculation, but I think they will do the different zones kind of thing, like Final Fantasy 12, Dragon Quest, or something. It's just that when you're in the airship, you're so high above the air that that you can't like see what's on the ground. Like you're so high, like you're so high above it. Like if you think about how high a plane is in real life, like
yeah, that's a good way to do it.
You're about that distance from the ground, so that when you come down to one of the zones, like so it's like you're flying over it, and then if you want to land, you say you will now land in Jador area zone, or you will now and land in South Figaro, right? And
that's
then,
pretty cool. I like that. I like
that zone.
Yeah, and like it's almost like Final Fantasy, how Final Fantasy VI did. You get in the airship, just quick transition. You're not, you know, and you're on the airship now with like a different, like in coding terms, like a different interface, so to speak. Fly on the airship, you go and land. Now we are in the open world with the town nearby.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that idea. That gives me ideas for Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. Very cool. So chat, is there any topic that you guys would like us to talk about? Please let us know, and I'll send it over to our guests.
I want to hear what Drake has to say about Terra, considering
about Terra. We had Techno go off about Kefka. Let's go Terra, and why Terra is the best character of all Final Fantasy.
Honestly, she's one of my top favorite fictional characters of all time. Like again, like top three easily probably. And I'm just gonna say also, Techno basically copying a lot of points my essay I made there with talking about Kefka there, because short version, I did a big huge essay for its anniversary on Reddit talking about Final Fantasy VI and analyzing it and how Kefka contrasts the characters so well.
But I read that. Really good read.
Thank you. Yeah. And Terra, she really is the best because on the one hand, she starts off as an audience surrogate and perfectly justified. She has amnesia, kind of stock plot device, but she doesn't understand. And the thing that always interests me is the characters are like, the Empire was just using you. They were controlling you. They only cared about your powers. The Returners aren't that much better. Like they're nicer about it. They ask, they don't mind control her, but Bannon is still exploiting Terra's power and her connection to the Espers the same way that the Empire was. And this is a detail just to bring up that was cut from the Super NES version because of the glitch. When doing the meeting, a Returner meeting in the hideout, the Super NES accidentally cut out a line of dialogue where Edgar brings up, well, maybe we need to fight them with Magitech weapons. Bannon said, no, I don't want to use Magitech. Let's wake up the Esper. And then later he brings up, well, you know where the Esper world, like the co-returners come back to him and pour it in and tell him, here's everything we've learned. We just saw Terra's flashback. And Bannon's immediate reaction, let's open the gate to the Esper world. So like Bannon was almost opportunistic there. Like he wants the power of Espers. He just wants them to fight the Empire, but he still, that's not a great light form. Bannon's kind of morally gray there, and the Returners are morally gray. So it makes sense for Terra. I don't know which side I want to be on. It's not as simple as the Empire is evil and these guys are good. You're telling me the Empire is evil. I don't remember. I'm hanging out with you guys. You're not exactly knights in shining armor. And especially as she takes part in the war, she sees what Kefka does. She sees what the Empire is doing. And yes, the Returners are trying to stop them, but it's war. It's war, and there are not always good guys in war. War is destruction, it is death, and it is horrifying. And Terra is in the middle of this, and she really wants no part of it. But then she wants to know who she is, and these people are willing to help her. And then she learns she's half Esper, which really, before Kefka moved the Warring Triad, Terra was probably the most powerful creature on the world. Like with her, like if she went all out, who knows? Like she's basically a demigoddess. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that. And she hates it because she has this magic power that everyone is just using to hurt people, and she doesn't want to do that. I don't want to use my powers to hurt people. So I've seen a theory, and I don't know how, like, if this was intended, but it makes sense where like emotionality is connected to power in Final Fantasy VI. And that's why the Espers lost control when they went to Vector and learned what the Empire was doing, and they flew into a rage. And that's why Terra lost control of her powers. When she touched the Esper, she realized what she was and she lost control there. And I think, and during the fight with Humbaba as well. And so Terra, like, World of Ruin happens. Terra ends up caring for these orphan kids, ends up starting to feel affection for them. And her powers kind of, in the story, her powers leave her. She feels she can't fight anymore. But then she finds the resolve to, no, I do want to fight and I have to fight. But it's not about hurting people. It's not about destruction. It's about protection. And it's about caring. I want to use my powers for good to help people and make the world a better place. And I love that because that is the quintessential heroic motivation. It's, as the saying goes, power doesn't make a superhero. Heroism makes a superhero. Terra wants to use her powers for good, to do good. And I love that. And that is perfect. And she is, as Techno said, she is Kefka's perfect foil in terms of learning to control her powers and connecting with her emotional self. And I'll also say, you want to come at this from the feminist angle. Terra has no love interest. Like, there's a couple moments with Locke in the early game, but Locke ends up with Celes implicitly, and no one steps in. Terra has no love interest. No one's ever interested in her romantically. She shows no romantic interest in anyone. Her character development and self-actualization is about motherly love and protection. And I love that. And yeah, still female stereotyping, whatever. But I love that that's a different thing. She wants to protect people. She wants to protect the kids she loves. And so the end of the game, she stands up to Kefka, and her especially, having her amnesia, having no family, being a creation, a lab experiment of the Empire. She especially has probably come from the darkest place of any of the characters, or at least has the least reason to want to fight. She has the least reason to fight. And she's the one who stands up to Kefka and, you're wrong. This world is beautiful and worth protecting, and we're not going to let you hurt it anymore. And if you're not going to stop, we are going to stop you. And she does this knowing it could cost her life. But she lives, but she's willing to make that sacrifice. And it's beautiful, and it's a beautiful arc. And yeah, that's all I can say. It's a great character arc for Terra, and that's why I love her. She has such awesome growth, and she's an awesome character.
Yeah.
I wanted to add a couple things to that, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, like you mentioned the feminist angle. Like I think that's a really important point. Also, is like definitely Terra is not only a character who's a strong female character. Like, the fact that she's female is like is very core to who she is. She's very distinctly feminine for the reasons you brought up about her being like motherly, for instance. Like so lots of times, like when you write like strong female characters, people sometimes either forget or intentionally choose not to write them as specifically feminine, right? Or make that a core part of who they are. So yeah, for instance, like if you think of like Ahsoka from Star Wars, or like Korra from Legend of Korra, or even like people like Beatrix in Final Fantasy 9, or like Lightning in Final Fantasy 13. Like, these are good characters, they're strong, powerful people that happen to be women, but that's just it. They're characters that happen to be written as female. You could change their gender and they'd still be very much the same person. Which is a fine way to write a good character. Like, especially like, for instance, I know with Ahsoka, he like Dave Filoni made that decision because he's like, I've never been a teenage woman. I don't know how to write one. I'll just write a character and then make her happen to be female. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Terra, and this is also true of Celeste in a way, like it's still a strong female character. They make it specifically feminine. You can't change her gender and have her still be the same person. So that's like, anyway, to the extent I have any business talking about feminist issues.
Well, let's say I get where you're coming from, because you're right. And that's not to say that Lightning is bad as a feminist, to view as a feminist character or feminist icon. No, I'll say like she's not one of my faves, but Lightning's great. Lightning's cool, but there is that stereotype that feminine traits are seen as weakness.
Right.
No, and Terra and Celes and like Final Fantasy VI, femininity is not weakness. Emotionality is not weakness. And I'll also just say on that stereotype, the thing I also find is when you have these female protagonists, especially in video games, to keep it PG, let's say they're usually intended to be pleasing to the eye, shall we say.
Yeah.
Terra is a classically beautiful character, in my opinion, but she is not played up for fan service in any way. She is not she does not have revealing clothing. She does not have an overly developed, exaggerated figure. And so we can have this female character who is pretty to look at, but we're not going to make her a sex symbol. Right. And again, that's refreshing. And it's nice to have a female character who can just, I'm here and I'm nice looking, but you're not going to don't dress me up in sexy outfits, Toriyama. I mean, sorry. I had to fit that in.
Very good points. All very, very good points. And
I just asked Drake, were you intentionally avoiding bringing up Tifa as a comparison, knowing I'm in
No.
You intentionally.
No, but to that point, the praise I have for Celeste and Terra applies to Tifa and Aerith as well, for the exact same way, in that they're strong characters that are distinctly female characters, right? And these feminine traits are not seen as weak. By the way, also another thing where I think Final Fantasy VI is so ahead of its time is that's actually true for the men as well. Like the men, you brought this up to me, Drake, actually, the men are allowed to be at times emotional and vulnerable, and they're never seen as weak for it. They're never portrayed as in the wrong for it. They're never shamed for it.
The narrative itself, it's not even how the other characters treat it, it's how the narrative frames it. Cyan's grief for his family. The game never frames Cyan's grief as a flaw or something he needs to man up and get over it. No, it's something he has to work through. And it does that for all of them. It's not just how the characters treat it, it's how the narrative frames it. It's not a weakness.
Yeah, this is why Sabin is my favorite non-Kafka character. It's because Sabin represents so many of the traits that so many positive masculine traits that I find really inspiring personally. It's just the fact that he's very strong physically, and he uses that strength in service of being compassionate and being empathetic. It's and being in terms of being a good brother, saving a burning building by holding it up, suplexing a train just to be a badass. Sabin that's why I really love Sabin so much, is he's just so inspiring for me personally. When I think of the man I try to be, Sabin has many of those traits.
He can be the badass muscle man who suplexes a train, and he's also going to be the guy who takes the orphaned wild child to meet his dad and tries to teach him proper etiquette so he can show he's a good son. And Sabin is probably probably the last character you would expect to give anyone an etiquette lesson. And maybe Watson versus Doyle, maybe it's just because Sabin is the one that's closest to Gal. We'll have him do it. He'll take the lead. But how it ended up, Sabin's giving Gal an etiquette lesson and trying to teach him how to eat properly, which in turn, of course, implies that Sabin knows this stuff, but makes sense. He was raised a royal child.
Yeah, exactly. So much to flesh out there too, story wise, character wise. Oh man, I love it.
Speaking
One
of
thing I do kind of want to. Oh, go ahead. Oh no, Vinny, please go ahead,
oh
brother.
no, it's fine if you want to move on to like a different portion. I was just gonna
Well, I
bring up
was gonna.
Shadow.
Okay, go ahead, dude. Shadow, real quick.
Sure.
I was just going to
Yeah.
address what Creasman said in chat. And
Okay,
then,
you can address that.
Okay. Well,
'Cause my
just
shadow
one
might-
quick thing
might
I just
drag
wanted to
on.
add too quickly with Techno. No, I'm not being critical of Tifa with her
No,
sexuality.
you're fine.
I respect
I was just
Remake. The only time Tifa's sexuality is important is when Don Corneo, it kind of would be important, you know.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's
but
that's the same segment where they also have, you know, Cloud cross-dressing, and in 7 Remake not being shamed for that.
And I'm so glad they made that change.
Yeah, in the original, it's kind of like they kind of like it's like Cloud gets thrown out of every place. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you sick person. But like in 7 Remake, they kind of fixed that.
Yeah.
yeah, very much. They did Wall Market really good. Go ahead, Vinny, talk about Shadow real quick while we're staying on the characters.
So we were talking about the game coming out episodically or fleshing out characters and everything. A big hurdle I saw, it would be a hurdle if they remained true to his original plan, but Shadow entering and leaving your party, you know, in certain segments of the game, and
Yeah.
then you know, that moment where you know that big wheel of death is chasing you and you have to like, you know, unintuitively sit there and keep yourself in danger before moving on to save him. Like that episodically, I don't know how that would go, because like we have a theory for Final Fantasy 7 how they're going to for Remake, how they're going to kind of explain the whole power difference, how like you were strong at the end of the game and you're going to go to getting your ass handed to you by coyotes in Remake Part 2. I don't know how, like, if they were to do episodic, they would have to do like, you know, I guess gated level caps and then find a way to make your experience carry over into the next episode. And then with characters like Shadow, like if you don't get Shadow, but then he's like a character all of a sudden in the second episode or something like that, you know, because Shadow could die, could live. It all depends on if you like him, I guess. And then, you know,
Or
the
if
other,
you know that you can save him.
yeah,
I could save him the first time. So I let him die. I was so sad about that.
well, unintuitively, you know, you make it to the end and you're like, oh, how are you supposed to know you're supposed to like hang out there for like 2 minutes?
Right.
And then he just
Well,
comes
I think an
strolling
easy
along.
fix be canonically he just escapes with you. Like maybe just remove that option.
But that option is one of the things that those little mini interactions within Final Fantasy VI, I think, is what makes it so good, because there are things that subsequent playthroughs, for instance, it like, you know, if you didn't know you could save Shadow and then you find out you could save Shadow, you're like, I want to play again. I want to save Shadow. I want Moogle in my party. I want, you know, like all those things. It's like it's good to make things canonical or canon, but at the same time you're taking something away by making that sacrifice.
And like Mass Effect 2, like the suicide mission and stuff, you could do it kind of Mass Effect 2 style, where I mean, 14 characters, some of them can die, you know what I mean?
It's interesting you bring up Mass Effect, because if anything, what 6 did is kind of a precursor to what Mass Effect does, especially with Mass Effect 3. Like with Mass Effect 3, you're like, oh, I can collect all these war assets, and if I collect enough of them, then I go into the final battle and I'm better off. Whereas in Final Fantasy VI, it's like, if I recruit all the characters that are around, then I'll find the final battle much easier, because I have to split them up into 3 parties. So
exactly.
Like, I agree with what you're saying about if depending on how they were to make it episodic, you could potentially like ruin that aspect of it if you take away things like player choice with regards to that, and like previous episodes affecting the future ones. So I think that is why that's ultimately one of the main reasons why I lean more towards, if I were to do it, and if you were to give me like a full budget and infinite time, I would split it up into the two parts. You have Final Fantasy VI Infinity War, and followed up with Final Fantasy VI Endgame, and that's kind of how I do it. Like World of Balance, World of Ruin.
And
And
I'm
also,
just gonna. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna go to Kreisman says that you can miss his whole backstory if you don't take it to certain ends and rest.
And I think that's kind of a weakness, because like the
Yeah.
player has no reason to use an in the World of Ruin, really.
Yeah, but
like
see,
you could buy tents.
if you kind of encourage it, I guess, in a way, but I actually like that a lot. So if you go to like Last of Us 2, there's a whole entire scene, like a cutscene that you would completely miss. In fact, I've talked to a friend that completely missed that cutscene, didn't get to see Ellie play in the song. And I was like, that's actually really cool, because then you can kind of talk to you. It encourages this conversation like, hey, did you get to see his backstory in Final Fantasy VI? And it's like, no, I didn't know. Yeah, go back to the end and do this and stuff. And I feel like that kind of it kind of makes the player feel rewarded for doing certain things. Like
with regards to that, like that's also true of 7 Remake a lot, and that's one of the things I love about it, is how many like optional scenes there are, and it's just cool that you can miss certain things but see other ones. But on the other hand, like there are certain things in 7 Remake that you can't miss, and I'm glad that you can't miss certain things. Like
true.
There are certain like character moments and interactions that I wouldn't want them to miss. So so that's where you'd say, like with regards to like Gal's backstory, that might be an example where you say, all right, we'll make this mandatory, but we'll add this other optional thing instead.
Yeah, because like that's not even like an optional scene. That's talking to NPCs. If you never talk to NPCs, then Sabin just out of nowhere, hey Gal, this might be your dad. Based on what? You haven't talked to the NPCs. They never told you about this guy throwing out his kid. How do you know this? A player can easily miss that.
I definitely think like the number one thing I would say for 6 Remake would be flesh out its underdeveloped characters, because the characters are all good. Well, I mean, Umaru is barely a character, but like the characters are all good. They're just uneven.
Yeah.
As in, some get way more development than others do. Like I mean, Umaru barely gets any, but I guess you could like I wouldn't mind them just kind of reframing Umaru more as like the Chewbacca of the story, where it's like Umaru is just kind of like Mog's sidekick, and that's kind of like I guess shuffled in a little bit with that. I wouldn't mind them framing it in that way. The only one
Final Fantasy VI integrate and have Umaru as the main character.
We had a joke on the Final Fantasy Wiki that they were going to make a sequel to Final Fantasy VI called Strago Returns. Final Fantasy VI. And it was gonna be all about Strago's story.
I remember like during the LP we joked that like Strago can do like Sonic the Hedgehog, where he curls into a ball and spins and his mohawk attacks enemies.
And we had a joke that they were going to reveal Gogo's real identity, and it was Adlai Stevenson all along.
That old joke.
but that brings up the point about with Gogo's the one that would be the most difficult to flesh out, because kind of the reason why Gogo works so well is because you don't know anything about them, right? And I say them because we don't even know their pronouns, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if it's male or female or whatever. Like we don't know anything about Gogo, so it's kind of hard to flesh that out without kind of ruining that aspect of Gogo is you paste anything onto this character and that's who Gogo is. Right. But like they did have I think this is still a theory. I don't think they confirmed it. Drake can tell me if they did or not. But like this idea like Siegfried, who like is this random recurring character in the world of balance and then just suddenly disappears. And there was this whole side quest they found that you were going to like piece things together from Siegfried, and then it turns out Siegfried is Gogo or something like that.
Okay, I can't answer that. I actually have a lot of things to say, but I'll touch one on one. To answer the Gogo question first, that there's officially nothing, but there was going to be originally a side quest with Gogo was you'd have to go in various pubs across the world and he would be impersonating one of your party members. And if you spoke to him with the party member he was impersonating in your party, it would like reveal his deception and he'd flee or something like that. And it's speculated that Siegfried may have played into that, like maybe he was the imposter Siegfried, because like Siegfried himself, like I have no clue what's going up with Siegfried. Like his character is just a big riddle as to who he is and what his, like there was clearly some sort of subplot planned there that was heavily cut. But but like officially apparently they said what's Gogo's true identity, they don't have one. Like officially they didn't have one. It's just Gogo. I default to he, but they are just here. And I think like, you know, you did the Final Fantasy 14 reference with them. Gogo is clearly a reference to Final Fantasy 5, not just in the fact having the name Gogo, but also how equipping his ability works just like in that game. I'd be totally fine with them going the Gilgamesh and Omega route and saying it's the same Gogo every time. He just Gogo just is, and they travel between worlds. They're Gogo. They are. And fleshing out backstory, I think Gogo, I also think, just to bring it back to Kefka, basically, I wouldn't be opposed to finding out a bit more about his backstory. Like, you know, if like the non-canonical thing, like he was appointed court mage after he was a general until he got experimented on. And then when he turned out he was kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, he was removed from his post and he was given the position of court mage as like, well, as like a thank you for your service. Like if they wanted to add little things to Kefka's backstory a little bit, I could see that. But if you really want to get full into his backstory and flesh him out, no. Kefka, I feel, to lean into the Joker parallels, Kefka's backstory doesn't matter. Kefka is, and that's how he works. Right. If you give him a backstory, a backstory wouldn't ruin him, but it could easily ruin him. Right. So you'd have to give him the right amount of backstory. And overall, his backstory would not really add to him as a character. Kefka is who he is in the game. Right. That's what makes him Kefka.
I like that. Yeah.
Like, it depends on the character. Like sometimes the backstory can make the villain. Like I would argue Arden. Like I love Arden. Arden is one of my favorite villains. Oh, yeah. I would argue the backstory plays a huge amount into why he works so well as a villain. You know, this whole tragic story where he was basically like I don't know.
Jesus.
He was a good person.
He was Jesus, basically.
Yeah, he was like virtuous. He was a virtuous person.
Yeah.
Like, for his time, and then it's just the way he was like punished for being such a good person. That like really works into why Arden works so well. Whereas with Kefka, the backstory doesn't play into it. Like what plays into it is just the fact that he is who he is. The fact that
we don't need to know why he went mad.
Like an NPC says he was an experimental Magitech knight. He was the first one. The process was imperfect. He went insane. Yeah, like maybe a flashback to like him undergoing the procedure. I could see that, but
that would be cool.
That NPC dialogue, that's all you need.
Yeah,
that's all you need to know about Kefka. Not even that really.
While the NPC is saying the backstory, they can show little flashes of like him being experimented on. Would be interesting, I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing is, like with Kefka, you understand why he is how he is. It's because of the nihilism. You understand why that is without needing the backstory. Whereas with Arden, the backstory is why he is who he is. So
yeah, you needed that. Sometimes it's really great to flesh out a villain, and sometimes it's just like the villain is because the villain is.
Exactly.
And I would say that's the case with the Joker, but
yeah,
I don't want to talk too much about the Joker film.
Yeah, there is parallels that people make with Kefka and Joker.
I think
my only parallel is
like
it's
Square Enix leaned into it a bit.
Yeah.
Like if you think of like in Dissidia, like I feel like they just told the voice actor,
"Oh yeah,
see Mark Hamill's Joker, do that."
And then I did that. I actually did that. I don't know if these guys have seen it. I did a video where I took clips of Mark Hamill from doing the Joker from the Arkham games as intro quotes for Kefka and Dissidia. And the one that everyone loves, there's two that everyone loves that I'll mention. Again, this was Mark Hamill doing it when he faces Cloud. the ladies hate it when you brood over the ex you failed to save, which is perfect. But the one that everyone loves and like people are like cracked up laughing is when he's fighting Sephiroth. So grim. Do you suppose his mother just didn't hug him enough? But like overall, it works. It really does. And like I don't mind the parallels, but Mark Hamill's Kefka Mark
Hamill's Kefka is that's
Mark
it.
Hamill's Joker as Kefka.
I'm all
just
on
works.
board for that.
Yeah, I think I think the parallels are pretty clear. Like even though I would say I would not say that they are like the same character. I would say they have just enough like distinguishing them where I still think Kefka works as a great character and isn't just a Joker knockoff.
Yeah.
So I think people who say Kefka is just a Joker knockoff are kind of missing the bigger point. Like I feel like that's and this is kind of something that applies to 6 in general. I feel like a lot of people who found 6 underwhelming, part of that is just the fact that it is an old game, and it is an old game on SNES hardware. So things like the opera scene now aren't as impressive because it's just like, oh, okay, it's just some sprites playing out an opera. But what's so powerful about it is, or at least for me, is when I was playing through it, I was like, they did this in 1994, right? They did this on this tiny ass hardware that just was not built for any of this. And that's why I love the dancing mad fight so much, is considering how little they have to work with.
Yeah,
they're making.
I definitely respect that for
sure. Epic scale. They're trying to make a God of War boss battle on a system from 10 years prior to that. So that's why that's so incredible to me.
Okay. I'm sorry. So I just this thing I want to hit just before we get too far off. I'll just mention for the technical things. It really is impressive because for behind the scenes, how they did the dancing mad battle, there are enemy sprites, and because I've gone into the program editor, there are enemy sprites. They'll all use the generic dinosaur enemy sprite, and they're set to not have the sprite appear. And the sprites are just positioned over the background. And when you kill all the enemies, the battle background changes. And then this new enemy formation is called in, but it looks like you're fighting the statue. And another technical thing that I thought was fascinating is how they did the Serpent trench sequence, because it looks like you're swimming through the trench. How they did that, they basically put the party on it. The Serpent trench is a different world map. They put the party in this world map area, gave them and made it you're on an airship now, and make the airship invisible, and then follow the path through the trench. And now it looks like a first-person perspective of you swimming through this area, when in coding terms, you're just flying on an airship that you can't see over a world map. Yeah, and it's brilliant and it works. And they did so many little tricks like that.
They were so ambitious, man. So many ideas. They're we're gonna make this work.
That's the thing. That's why I feel there's definitely a crowd of people who find the game overrated, and I think that's just because it's harder to appreciate a lot of this stuff considering how old the game is.
Yeah.
So it's easy to see how some stuff wouldn't resonate with people as well as it did.
Yeah.
A lot of narrative themes, for instance. There's only so much you can do when the narrative is told by little sprites over text boxes.
Yeah.
So I completely understand why some people aren't as hot on 6 as me and Drake are. I understand why that is, but I feel like the game would resonate so much more were it remade.
With the remake,
Yeah, I feel like if it were given properly fleshed out as it was, then it would resonate a lot more. So I'll give an example with Final Fantasy VII, actually. And Final Fantasy VII, as I've said, is also one of my favorite games of all time. I also love that game. But originally, I was never that hot on Cloud. I don't know, that's kind of blasphemous, right? Is Cloud just didn't resonate that much with me. Because before I was I just don't get it. And my perspective coming in was I just don't understand. I get that this is a guy who's starts out as a hardened badass and then turns into what he is, like, okay, I've seen that done a million times before.
Mhm.
First of all, what I was missing at the time was actually the reason I've seen that a million times before is because everyone was copying Cloud,
Mhm.
right? Is everyone had copied what Cloud
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So like Jack from Jack and Daxter, for instance. Like I feel like there are a lot of comparisons between Jack in Jak 2 as there are Cloud from Final Fantasy 7. That's just one example, right? That's the first thing I was missing. The second thing was it just hadn't hit as hard with me. Like the idea that like actually when Cloud is trying to say a lot of this stuff, he's actually just kind of awkward. Like he's actually kind of a dork. He's not
Mhm.
like
He's trying to be cool. Yeah.
He's trying to be cool, but it just doesn't work as well. But because of Cody Christian's phenomenal performance as Cloud, and the fact
And
that
I think Techno and
I
think Techno and I agreed. We prefer the new voice actor to Steve Burton. No offense to Steve Burton, the new guy blows him away though.
But like the thing is like because of that just phenomenal performance, and because of like I was like especially with a lot of the scenes with Aerith, like the scenes that make it so much clearer. Oh, this guy's actually just kind of awkward, right? And he's kind of a dork. I was like, oh, I get it now. So so Cloud went from someone that I didn't dislike but didn't really care so much for to like one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy also because like Tifa and Barrett were always my favorites in the game. And I was seeing a lot of people, there were a lot of hot takes about were they really that good though? And then I was seeing more people like start to appreciate them. And I was like,
exactly. Techno knows I was the same with Tifa. Techno knows I was the same with Tifa. Like I didn't come away from the original 7 hating Tifa, but I'm like, okay, Tifa's fine. Remake, they do a lot of, they flesh out her character so well, and I like, Tifa's cool. I get it. She's awesome now. I get you.
Right, and like I liked Aerith before. I love Aerith now.
Oh yeah.
Like,
she's second favorite for me. Terra is number 1. Aerith is my number 2 because of Remake.
Right. It's funny how we have like mirror image opinions there, where like his favorite's Terra, mine's Kafka. His favorite's Aerith, mine's Tifa. Funny how that works out. But, like,
let's not start the shipping wars.
I won't even get into that. But look, also, like, that's just an example of how like when you remake the game and you really focus on the characterization and stuff, having more hardware to work with, like it just feels like that's one of the reasons why I'm so like into this idea of remaking Final Fantasy VI is because I want these characters to resonate more with people in the way that they resonated with me and the way they resonated with a lot of the fans from the time. So that's really that. I guess that would be the main thing I would want to see from Final Fantasy VI is people coming away and seeing a lot of these narrative themes and a lot of these characters and a lot of like all the things that 6 did really well and it resonating with a new audience that might have like completely missed that. And I understand why it missed a lot of people.
Yeah. Just you actually brought back to something again. I'm sorry, I had a backlog of thoughts. You mentioned
I'm gonna step away for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Got it.
You go ahead, continue.
Okay. Shadow, the thing that occurred to me when like with Shadow is he joins Sabin in doing the trip through Dharma, and it's like, yeah, I can take you through the Imperial camp. You know, there's a battle line going on. The thing that struck me out of nowhere one day, why does he do this? Shadow has never met Sabin. He, as far as we don't know if he's traveling, like they don't mention if he's traveling through Dharma. Why would he offer to escort Sabin through an active war zone? And I'm like, maybe this is just a plot hiccup. Like they did mean to say, I'm traveling down that way. If you want to tag along, sure. Or like maybe that is something they could expand somehow where like Shadow is willing to actually help Sabin for some reason. That could be an interesting way to expand his character. And something else, Vincent, is it? I'm sorry.
Who, me?
Yes. You mentioned player choice and how that's impactful. Something that occurred to me is something that really they like. I have my opinion on what is canonical, but I also understand you can't take away the player choice. So, but saving Sid, you can't take that. If I consider it canonical that Sid dies because I think it makes a more powerful scene. But if you take that away, it's ruined. You have to give the player the option to try and save him. And even if, like, okay, maybe you just rig it behind the scenes, so we'll let you try and save him, but you're not going to succeed. But you have to at least keep that the player tries to save him and they fail. If you take that away and Sid if you just like did a cutscene of Celes going to fish and trying to nurse him back to health, and it doesn't, and he passes away anyway, it's not going to hit anywhere near as powerfully as the player trying to save him and they fail and they control Celes as she walks up the cliff. That the player control over that scene is what helps what makes it so powerful. They can't take that away. So
Yeah,
that's a good point there.
Because you're choosing to try and save him.
Mhm.
And I, when games give you choice, usually like the choice, the result you're trying to get is usually what they'll give you. Like, oh, I want to try and save Sid, so they're gonna let me save Sid. But
Mhm.
it's so much more impactful when you make the decision to try and save Sid, and then it doesn't work out, and you're like, oh, I tried. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of emotionally invested at that point.
Mhm.
So it just, like you said, like with the player choice, things hit harder with player choice. Like
Mhm.
with Shadow, if you try and say, like, Shadow's in your party, and he's been running with you most of the game, right? And um if you were given the choice to save or not save, like if it was a clear cut choice,
Mhm.
not like,
Yeah.
if you wait long enough you could save him. If it was a
Yeah.
clear cut choice, maybe make it to where, like, there's a string of choices and there's a fail condition for the string of choices, kind of like acquiring Yuffie. There's a fail condition with each choice, and then there's the correct one, which brings her onto your team. Those fail conditions can make it to where, like, you're trying to get him, you're trying to save him, and then the player has the choice to save him or not save him. I think if that could get fleshed out, that could be more impactful, because
Mhm.
ultimately it's a role-playing game. It's an RPG. So
Mhm.
you want to play the game how you want it, how you want to play. You're role playing. Um, so it's all about player choice,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And it just occurred to me too. Think Shadow. Thing that I always annoy. Every player's annoyed by this. Shadow's tendency to randomly run away, and like that's why I like no one. Everyone is like, don't recruit Shadow and Colin again. He's just gonna take off, and you're gonna have to backtrack to Nosh to get another character. But even then, if you're playing through the game for the first time, you don't know he's gonna take off at any time. So
Mhm.
you're like, hey, Shadow, he's in Colin again. Let's get him back. He's cool. And then he takes off and ditches you. Okay, thanks. But then later, when he comes to save the party from the burning house, and then comes and helps on the floating continent, that plays in that perfectly. Shadow's not running out on you this time. Shadow's coming back to help you. And it makes those moments much more impactful if you've gone with him before and know that he's gonna take off when he likes.
Mhm. And I like how all of these characters feel like people, and not, like, not what the writer wants them to be, but they are kind of just people who fall into their own personalities. Like, I respect Shadow because he doesn't really hold an allegiance to the party. He's
Mm-hmm.
not inherently a bad guy, not inherently a good guy. He's just kind of doing his thing. Kind of like, a sword for hire in certain instances, and he's just around. And he kind of just does his own thing. And you know, he eventually, like, he's like, well, I live on this earth. I live on this planet. Kefka's trying to destroy it. I should probably stop him from trying to do that, because that affects me. So it's not that he's a good guy. It's just he doesn't want
Yeah.
his world destroyed. So I respect what Shadow represents.
And I've seen a theory too. Also, I don't know. I'm trying to keep it to. I don't remember if it was like for something someone did a mod where they did this in the story, or if it's just a theory I saw that Shadow, when he accompanied the group to Thamasa, he was the mole for Gastal, and when Shadow took off after the burning house, it wasn't like I'm gonna go find the Esphers my own way. He was going to report to Gastal and Kefka now that he knew the secret of the village, and this was important. He went to tell them, and that's why Kefka showed up when he did, which does nothing in game we explicitly says that, but it's plausible and it's an interesting interpretation, and yeah, it wouldn't be out of character for him.
I think I have another point to say on the role-playing aspect of it, and this might lead into a broader point of how, in a lot of ways, Final Fantasy VI was really a precursor to 7 in more ways than some people realize. So, like, I think 6 is the first time they really started doing the role-playing in role-playing game for Final Fantasy, at least as far as narrative was concerned.
Yeah.
Like, especially with Final Fantasy V, player choice is very important from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah.
Like, it's very cool, like that your own playthrough of it. You choose whatever jobs you want, whatever combination of jobs you want. You level up however you want. But 6 is the first one where like player choices really affect the game a whole lot in a whole lot of ways. And like and I'm not even sure they completely lived up to this ambition, but they had the ambition with 6 that any character can be the main character.
Yeah.
Any character can be the main one. And I feel like it kind of lends itself more towards Terra being the main character, or Celeste, like considering that's who you start off with in World of Ruin and World of Balance and World of Ruin, and you know, Terra being the one that confronts Kefka at the end. They had that ambition, right? And it feels like in a way it means you can really personalize the adventure because you can decide who you think is the hero of this story, right? You can say like, oh, well, I relate, well, in my case, I'll be like, I relate most to Sabin, so Sabin is my hero of the story, right? Or like, I relate most to Edgar or Locke. Like, you could easily imagine Locke being the hero of the story, right? And I feel like that's something that like 7 kind of like took that, but in a completely different way. They said like 7, like, Cloud is such a well-written protagonist because it's like, on the one hand, he has a very defined personality and he's very interesting and he has a lot to him. But on the other hand, there's enough that you can reasonably make several different player decisions and choices as Cloud that it still feels in character for him. Like, it's
not so much the narrative, it's the date, though. I'm thinking like, do you mean like the date or just like in general?
As it, no, beyond the date. Like, beyond the date. Like, for instance, when Cloud is talking to certain people and you can decide if he's just a jackass to them or not.
Right.
Or if he's like
trying to be cool, or
or if he's like, either way would be perfectly in character for him. It's still very much your Cloud. And I don't think many RPGs do this except for maybe Geralt from the Witcher series. Like, they kind of do a similar thing where like the character is still well defined and interesting, but at the same time have a lot of player choice where you can like lend them in either way that you think like makes sense and that you like as your own personal playthrough. Like, a lot of RPGs will either say, well, this character is now a blank state and we're not really going to give them much personality because you make that up for yourself. Like, whereas like and I feel like 6 kind of like started that with the idea of like, we'll let you have your own protagonist. Like, there's a lot of things the 6 really did that like the 7 took and ran with it. Like, even there are some like narrative beats, for instance, in 6 that went over to 7 a lot. I think Drake probably has more to say on that.
I don't remember, but I did like make a list one time of like a list of, here's a rundown of the comparisons. Oh, hey, here's your kind of here's your half-breed mysterious waif who's gonna save the world. And oh, hey, here's this former general for the evil empire that went insane and becomes a god. And here's this airship pilot who really doesn't want anything to do with the party, but ends up throwing his lot in with them anyway. But I made them like very broad comparisons, but there are similar beats. I'll just say quickly on the character. That's a good point because like because they don't use specific character dialogue a lot in the World of Ruin. It could be anyone that's in the lead, and like I do consider Terra the main character because even if you don't re-recruit her, she gets if for those who haven't played through Final Fantasy VI and not recruited Terra, when you confront Kefka at the end, there's a scene of her like sensing that my planet needs me, and like she goes out and flies to Kefka's tower, and she still gets a scene in the ending. And all the other characters except for Sela Sega and Setzer you'll just not see their ending scenes if you don't save them. Terra still gets her ending scene and she still flies and she still takes part in the ending. So I think Celis and Terra are the co-protagonist or protagonist and deuteragonist. And like the final shot is Terra at the bow of the airship with Celis watching her. That's how I feel, but yeah, I'm just tossing that out.
No, and she's in all of the artwork and the logo and everything too.
So
it makes sense.
Yeah, she's an icon. She's awesome.
So
Yes.
Decreaseman had a question, and I think this segues really nice into probably another topic that we'd like to flesh out is so Decreaseman said that he or she personally believes that Final Fantasy VI has the best soundtrack out of all the games.
No argument.
So if there is a remake, and I feel like I already know what Techno's answer is going to be, but if there is a remake, what song are you most excited to hear remade?
The song that rhymes with Fencing Lad.
The fencing lad.
Like
Prancing Sad.
Well, if you get it, Dancing Mad kind of had its update with Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I'll just elaborate on that a little bit. I've seen Dancing Mad in concert, and it's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life, performed by a musical orchestra. Like, so I went to the Distant Worlds concert a while back, and then my friend was commenting because she'd been to the one previously. It's actually Drake, you know who it is. It's Tia from the Wiki.
Oh, okay. I remember, yeah.
Yeah, so we went to the concert together with a few other people, and she said, "What's that organ doing there? They've never had that before." I was like, "No, they're not doing Dancing Mad. No."
Like they wheeled it out on stage
Mad
before the next song?
Yeah, it was like the last song.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's like
Mad,
that's the preamble.
A full thing with this grand orchestra, and it just sounded so big and so powerful, like do 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 do, like that kind of thing. And it's just like, oh my god, like so. Just Dancing Mad, seeing that remade and as epic as they could make it is just like like I don't know, I can't even fathom like how cool that would be. Also relating to the same thing where I saw it in Distant Worlds, another one I'm really hyped for. One thing they did at the end of Distant Worlds was they showed us the full opera scene.
Oh wow.
Actual lyrics, like not stopped halfway through because of Ultras.
Yeah, right? Of course.
The full thing.
Good you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I'll wait my turn. Go ahead.
Yeah. They showed us the full thing, and just like it would be so great to see like what they would do with that in like in a remake as well. Like and see, like I think what would be kind of interesting would be to see like if you could I guess if you could like role play some of the actors in it, like, and see if they change the lyrics, like how they could like change the opera. Like I think that would be an interesting thing to see, like, oh, we could change the story of this opera a little bit up until when Ultros ruins it.
I think it would be even more fantastic to see modernized a giant octopus crashing an opera in general.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll say I came up just on Dancing Mad. I have a different answer for the soundtrack. Pardon me. I have a different answer for the soundtrack, but I'll say Dancing Mad. It was not I've heard the Distant Worlds remake, of course. It's glorious. There's another remix. It keeps slipping my mind. It's an official remix. I think it came out within. No, it came out within like the last couple years. I think. I don't think it was Distant Worlds. Maybe I'm wrong, but it came out in the last years, and it gets to like the slow part at the end of Dancing Mad, and then it goes and when like the slow ramp up to the final, like I guess you'd call it the crescendo to like the end of the like it goes do 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 do, and then it like really picks up again. And just as it hits that, not only does the electric guitar come in, the vocals come back in, and it's chilling. And it's like that is the best thing. It's like there's a certain pieces of music. Like another one I think is I've been doing the City of Trolls, so it's on my mind. The transition from Cantata Mortis to God and Fire, when you get the guitars and the chorus at the same time for a few seconds. It's so awesome. And this remix of Dancing Mad has that near the end. I don't know the remix off the top of my head. I don't know where it's from, but I'm certain it's official and it's awesome.
Christmas says maybe the Final Fantasy 14 one, and
I'm not sure.
I haven't heard it in a while, but yeah, I think
I don't know off the top of my head either, so I'm not sure. But so that's my thoughts on Dancing Mad. But the music I'd like remix specifically, aside from how do you call it? The whole Dawn soundtrack. The thing is, because again, it's on my mind. I'm doing my video on Ultros, and this like personally upsets me. Ultros has his own battle theme. He gets a unique boss theme for the opera, and I think Final Fantasy Record Keeper as we used it. It's never been like they didn't reuse it in 13.2. They didn't reuse it in 14. Ultros has his own unique boss theme when you fight him in the opera, and it's a good one. And in my opinion, it's perfectly Ultros because it's like upbeat and whimsical, and it sounds kind of silly. It's like and that's not it, but it's like a great theme, and it's perfectly fitting for Ultros. And I'm like, why has this never been reused for him?
They didn't even reuse it within Final Fantasy VI. Like Ultros is fought again, and it's still the normal battle theme.
Yeah, Ultros has his own boss theme. Gilgamesh gets Clash on the Big Bridge. Ultros Grand Finale. I was trying to think of the name. Grand Finale is the name. Ultros should have Grand Finale. Make that Ultros' boss theme. I'd love to hear it remixed and orchestrated and see how it's awesome. And I'd like to see more games reuse it because it's a good theme, and it's Ultros' own theme. Use it.
You can imagine Ultros would get such an incredible remade boss fight. Oh my god!
I was actually surprised when I did this. The opera fight with Ultros is surprisingly a head screw because he's moving around the stage. What's happening in terms of AI script is that the current Ultros, like he's in the center of the stage and he moves to the bottom left corner. In a coding sense, Ultros in the center of the stage, there's 5 Ultroses. And when they switches positions, that center Ultros is taken out and the one in the bottom left comes in. The thing is, because they're different Ultroses technically, they all have their own HP total. So it's like, if you deal 1,000 damage to Ultros when he leaves the center and comes to the bottom left, it's almost like he's fully healing himself. And then he fights there, and then he moves to another position and he's fully healed again. But then he moves back to the center position and he still has the damage you did to him when he was there before. So it's like, how much it almost mind screws. How much HP does he have? Because I'm reading the wiki page, it says he only has 2,000 HP. I've done way more damage than that and he ain't died. Well, it's because he keeps moving around. You haven't dealt 2,000 damage at once. And but that would be so much. That's just my coding thing that I know. But that would be so much fun. Like Ultros on the rafters with the weight. That's where I think the chibi, the hyper realism versus the stylized chibi cartoonishness. I think that's a place where you gotta lean into the cartoonishness a bit. Because if you're gonna go to the hyper realism like Final Fantasy VII and have Ultros with a 4-ton weight in the rafters above the opera, I don't know if that's gonna hit as well compared to.
I keep thinking about Kingslave. That's what I think about.
That version of Ultros. That was as far as other tracks from Final Fantasy VI, I'd be really excited for. I really love Terra's theme.
I think that was going to be my choice. That was going to be.
I think Terra's theme is beautiful. It's just such a good melody to it.
I love it, man. That one made my top 10.
Yeah,
it did.
Another one I just thought of. I can't remember what it is. I think I can't remember the name of the track, but it's the initial battle, the initial world map theme in the World of Ruin that they also use at the cultist tower.
Yeah,
where just like the creepy synthesized vocal. Like you do that fully orchestrated with an actual chorus. That would be like legitimately frightening, I'll bet. You just enter the world map and you hear this ominous chorus singing as like a pipe organ plays. It's like a funeral march for the world. Like that's the first time I felt the first time I see it. It's like the world is dead and we're playing the pipe organ at its funeral. That's how it felt for me. And like you do that fully orchestrated, that could be incredible.
I gotta go to Creasman on this one. I love this. He's kind of going off. He's not gonna stop before I name the whole soundtrack. But man, Magic Tech Research
Dark
Facilities.
Wolf, thank you.
One
Yes.
that I wanted to come back to.
Yes.
Because I was kind of upset that I didn't know where to put that in my top 10. Like there were so many great Final Fantasy songs, so it was hard to put that one in there. But
Yeah.
I love the Magic Tech Research Facility song. It's just it's so awesome. I love that. So I wanted to touch on that one. And then as Techno said, Terra's theme is that I just can't. I really would love to have a remake just to hear Terra's theme.
Yeah. That's there's the thing. Square Enix, if you're listening, you don't have to. We'd like Final Fantasy VI remake. We'll take the Final Fantasy VI remake OST.
The OST of the.
We'll take that. Like
Vinny, you had a good one. Vinny,
so mine, because I'm all about the boss battles and everything. Decisive Battle from Final Fantasy VI has to be probably one of the best boss soundtracks in the entire series. Probably like Genova, then Birth of a God, and then Decisive Battle is probably where I'd put it. And Seymour's battle theme, his final fight, that's just fun and bouncy.
I remember playing
love that theme. I just hate the fact that I kill Seymour too quickly to hear it.
I know.
But like as far as other themes go, the Figaro theme.
Yeah.
Love that.
Really the whole sound. It really is the whole soundtrack.
One quote taken from.
It's hard to narrow it down, but I think like going back to what you said about Decisive Battle, I really loved what 7 Remake did insofar as like it would like it has a kind of remix of a boss theme. It has several remixes of them, and it like misdirects you every time, so there are different versions. Like it's like how the Crab Warden theme, for instance, surprised me when I randomly rediscovered that. I was like, oh, this was actually really good. But like it would be so interesting to see how they would remix all the different battle themes, and they just like changed throughout the course of a boss battle. Like so I don't know. It's hard to narrow it down to like a few things from 6 I would really love to look forward to.
One thing
I wanted to say
like
about
Dancing Mad was like the precursor.
Dancing Mad.
No, Dancing Mad was like the precursor to all that stuff.
Dancing Mad walked so One Winged Angel could run, and then Dancing Mad said, "Hey, this is my shtick. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna outdo you. Thank you," because the remixes do outdo One Winged Angel, in my opinion. Dancing Mad's remixes outdo it. But just to bring things,
remix does outdoes the Dancing Mad remix.
But I'll say just to bring things back to the
really. But like Dancing Mad is one of the first ones that really does the like build up the theme throughout. It changes throughout the theme boss battle, and that's something that 7 Remake did, and I loved it. But no games have really done that in between 6 and 7 Remake. Okay, I mean, I guess you could say the Final Fantasy X end fight, but that's more like several different boss battles.
Yeah,
that just have to be in a row.
Which Final Fantasy X end fight are you talking about? When you're fighting Jecht, or
you have Jecht, and then you go straight to the Dark Aeons, and then you go to
I think
what was it? Yevon's
fight theme is very it goes with every, like, you're fighting on Jecht's sword, and you have like kind of like this like ethereal like background going on, like you're like zooming through, I guess you would say, like a heaven like area, fighting basically the god of that world. And then it's the piano that they have playing in the back, and then it's very, I would say, like that was probably the next time Final Fantasy did something like
I think that's fair to say. The only problem is in 10, I'm so overpowered by that point that I kill it in like 3 hits.
Well, you can kill you. He has zombie. He's a final boss that has zombie, so you can kill him.
No, Yevon.
X potion.
I just also gotta say, just to bring things back to the Fierce Battle for a second, I just say, like, the thing that I love about it is the opening crescendo of it, and then plus the fact you first see it with Ultima Weapon, who is up to that point the biggest enemy you've ever faced, and there's nothing else like it up to that point in the game. So you just talk to this thing, and suddenly this completely different boss thing you've never heard of starts playing. That sounds way more intense, and then you just see this gigantic biomechanical creature appearing in front of you, filling the screen top to bottom, side to side, and it's like shit just got real.
Yeah, Ultimate Weapon has like one of the best like monologues before. I know it's kind of short.
Yeah.
Like
I am Atma. I am pure energy, and as ancient as the cosmos. Feeble creatures die.
Yeah, it's like
go in the Super NES. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, the advanced.
That's what he says.
My name is Ultimate. I am both power. I am power, both ancient and unrivaled. I do not bleed, for I am but strength given form. Feeble creatures of the flesh, your time is nigh.
I don't remember the remake one. I remember the Super NES one.
Yeah,
I'll also say on the Fierce Battle.
That's the one I played.
I'll say also for using
so cool.
Fierce Battle for the Warring Triad. On the one hand, I'm thinking of 14, where it gave them each the Fierce Battle at first, but then they got their own individual music. So they could kind of do that. But what I think could also work is if you gave each of the Warring Triad their own vocalized version of the Fierce Battle. Like Ultima can have like the base default version, and then for the Warring Triad, you give them vocalized versions, and they could each have different vocals. Because you have the female, and then you have the two men. One of them could be like a higher pitch, the other one could be like a more bass, and they could all have like subtly different lyrics, and they all have their own vocal rearrangement of the Fierce Battle. That could totally work, and that'd be awesome.
So on the topic of Fierce Battle, and if you guys don't mind, I want to use this to segue into another like final topic for the 6th remake that I had in mind.
Okay.
Kaiser Dragon. The story of Kaiser Dragon, right? I mean, like, I was so happy when I got to fight Kaiser Dragon in the advanced version, and it was that Fierce Battle theme. But like, Kaiser Dragon had just been this legend that I'd always heard about before I played Final Fantasy VI. It was that legendary secret boss that they didn't fully implement.
Before the Aerith dies rumors, there was Kaiser or Zar Dragon.
Zar Dragon.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing that fascinates me is, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I don't remember if I read this on the wiki or if I came across it somewhere else, but it is in the Ultimanias. So this is official canon. The final magicite that you get for beating the 8 dragons, Jihad or Crusader, is the Warring Triad. And it mentions, like the Ultimanias say, this magicite contains a fragment of their power, and they appear when you use it. And now, on the one hand, this was really badly implemented because you summon the thing, and none of these 3 figures look like the Warring Triad. But like also like I think it's Final Fantasy Dimensions 2, the Warring Triad. The 3 of them are each a summon, and they each use Crusader's attack. But I'm thinking now they had these plans to because Zar Dragon, the dummy battle dialogue and the dummy AI script and all that, clearly Zar Dragon was planned for the original Super NES. They didn't make it up out of nowhere. And the magicite that's been sealed by the 8 dragons contains a fragment of the Warring Triad's power. There was a subplot here. There's a story we're not being told here. What is this story? What's the significance of the 8 dragons and this Crusader magicite? There's something big. I feel like it feels like there's a story behind all this. How this magicite came to contain their power, and how the 8 dragons ended up sealed, apparently to seal its power. I'd be curious, like if they could turn the 8 dragons into a subplot, maybe. I don't know, like how, like if you expand that and make it into a full subplot, I think that could be interesting because there's a story to be told there.
Yeah, the subplot would kind of it's kind of similar to what Final Fantasy V did with the sealed weapons. It's like it gives you a side quest where you go around the world to collect these different things to ultimately give you a power that helps you against the final boss in a way. But But like I think with Kaiser Dragon, I definitely believe that like they were going to turn that into a super boss similar to Shinryu and Omega, and they must have just like ran out of time or something like that.
Yeah.
But, like I think the way they did it in the advanced version is okay. Like because like they kind of took the same thing with 6 advanced that they did with 5 advanced, where and 4 advanced as well. I keep forgetting that one, where they add a different optional dungeon at the end, and they're like, we'll give you just a bunch of like really powerful things to fight, and this is just like an optional thing for those who want more to do with the game. And in 6, that's the only part of the game that's actually somewhat challenging, but even then, it's still fairly easy. But I thought it's like cool as hell that they included Kaiser Dragon, and I think they included Omega in there as well.
Omega Weapon.
Omega Weapon, that's right.
But like, and it's also like a different tone from the added content of 4 and 5, because as far as I like, Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 5, they didn't intend to include the Lunar Ruins or the Sealed Temple in those games. But again, Zod Dragon / Kaiser Dragon, they wanted to do that originally, and they had to cut it, and they didn't complete it for some reason. So they wanted to add this back in. So it's like this rumored super boss you've heard about for years. He's real now. Now's your chance. Have fun. He's real.
But the way they did it was okay, but I feel like they could have like fleshed out even more. Because like you said, like Sealed Temple in Final Fantasy V was just an add-on. Then they were like, all right, we'll give you more stuff to do. Here's Omega again, but harder. Here's Shinryu again, but harder.
Yeah.
And here's the real like thing.
Anuo.
Brought back. Yeah, Anuo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there's a story there too. Anuo, wasn't he like in the backstory of Final Fantasy V? I think like they had mentioned he's dead, but no, wait, he's alive in the depths of the Sealed Temple. There's a story here you could do. There's a story there.
But the real like thing was, we brought back the original sprite designer to design a new sprite just for this game.
Yeah,
let's say it's Anuo. So. But like with 6, it was more like we'll bring back the legendary Kaiser Dragon. Yeah. And because the previous game had 2 super bosses, I guess we need to have 2 super bosses. Yeah. Here's Omega Weapon.
Yeah. Even then they brought Kaiser Dragon back, but they gave him a new sprite. Like, it's clearly based on the original, but they gave him a new unique sprite.
Yeah, they gave him the original Kaiser Dragon in the code for advanced. They didn't like repurpose it or anything. It's still in there. But like I think it's okay, but the thing is like they didn't add much as far as like lore to it goes. Yeah. Like what I really, really love about Final Fantasy X's optional dungeon, the Omega Ruins, is you go in and there's like a proper cutscene where Aura tells you all about it and stuff. I thought that's cool as hell. I wish 6 did that. Yeah. I wish we knew about the Dragon's Den. Yeah. And what's the deal there? Like that would be cool as hell.
These are things that would be absolutely amazing to have in Remake. I love this, guys. I just love like just introducing a topic and letting you guys run away with it. This has been so fun. Thank you guys.
Just a quick thing. I just came to mind. I'll just toss out a thing. Final Fantasy Dimensions 2 again, where it has summons. Kaiser Dragon is a summon in it, and you can level it up 3 levels, I believe, or power it up. It starts out looking like Zod Dragon, but then by the time you power it up to the 3rd one, it looks like Kaiser Dragon. And I'm like, I love it. It's a nice little touch. I love it. Because like he starts at like, especially in particular, he doesn't have the wings. So he starts out like the original Zod Dragon, no wings. By the time he's powered up, he's Kaiser Dragon and he has his wings. I love that.
I mean, and just to praise the website a little bit here, guys. I'm looking it up as you're talking. I'm just looking it up. Easy as that, guys. If you just go to the Final Fantasy Wiki, you could be here for hours. You can get really wrapped up into this. Look at this. So here's the Kaiser Dragon, and then not only do you have the image of the Kaiser Dragon, you can even switch between GBA and the mobile PC version. I mean,
and I am personally proud of that because I scaled up those sprites because I'm like, you see how cool this is? You just switch between tabs and they look exactly the same. It's like you can see the graphic upgrade yourself.
Yeah, so he did the images. Awesome. I did the thing that lets you switch between them.
Yeah, Wikia cuts tab support a while, several years ago, and Techno like got them working.
Yeah, so
that's really cool.
all the tables and the stuff you see on that page were all done by me. Like
On this Kaiser Dragon page?
Yeah, that was done by me. Whereas like I did like the back end like code that runs that. Whereas like I don't remember if it was Drake or Crazy Swords who wrote the enemy pages. I think you like
I think it might have been even been JBet. I can't remember. I know I didn't write the enemy pages because I couldn't have the patience for that.
This is all, and it's all extremely intuitive too, and easy to go through, like fluid. Like, so as you're reading the description, you can see is a super boss, and then if you click on that, you go to a tab for Final Fantasy super boss. You know, you can go to the 8 legendary dragons are highlighted, and then all you got to do is simply click on that, and then look, and now you get a lot of information about the 8 legendary dragons, and it's just all thoughtful. Like you can see that a lot of thought was put into it. So
appreciate it.
Just yeah, absolutely. And I know that a lot of fans use the Final Fantasy Wiki. So if you have ever used the Final Fantasy Wiki, just drop a thank you to
drop a
Drakey.
thank you. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Help me out there. Whatever you want to do. But no, it's a labor of love. We love this series. We love this game. And like I said, like seeing the page, like when I did the sprites for that, and you can click between them, like that's such a cool feature, and I want people to be able to have that. Like if you go deep into the enemies in the original Super NES, you can go SNES, GBA, mobile, and for some that were were different in the PlayStation version, you can go to them too, and like you can see this progression of the sprite right in the template there.
That's awesome. Here we go. We got some you got some love in the chat right now, guys.
Thank
Vincent
you.
saying thank you.
I can't read
Priestman,
it, but
Starfire.
what you're saying.
Yeah, when I look up if I remember things correctly, you're not always using the Final Fantasy Wiki. Creasman, it's a necessary resource for the podcast I do with my brother, and they're obviously the Final Fantasy Weekly podcast, and you can definitely check them out as well. We reference it all the time. See, it's just such a vital resource to all of us. So thank you.
I'm glad you guys enjoy it. So
yeah.
I'll bring up the story that I hinted to in the last podcast, and I haven't gotten to tell it yet. Like, so the story with so I once wrote a page for Final Fantasy VI that I thought no one was ever gonna read. Right. So I wrote a page called Final Fantasy VI Enemy Formations. And when I was doing it at the time, I thought, no one's going to care about this. Like, this is just something that I'm doing so that we're more technically complete. There's no reason anyone's ever going to look this up. Anyone's ever going to want to know what enemy formation is in this game. And then a few months later, I'm playing Final Fantasy VI myself, right? Because I want to get all of Gao's rages. And I'm looking up a Steam forum where people are talking about it. And one of the first things that comes up is someone links to my page that I wrote as like a tip for how to get that achievement. I'm like, wow, all right. Okay, I guess I helped someone.
Yeah.
And I just, I don't know, I get super like happy when I see stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's gratifying. It's like this work, like you realize this work you do, people do notice it and they do appreciate it. They may not know you by name, but they see your work and thank you.
Right. Like, so I'll just say like the main thing I do at the moment, like I'm kind of like the informal lead on the current Final Fantasy VII content, on like revamping a lot of that and like amping up the quality a lot of that. Drake's been doing that for Final Fantasy VI content, but I've been doing it for 7. So like I do a lot of stuff like so the Cloud page, Cloud, Tifa, Barra, Aerith, those pages were all written by me. The current versions are. And I did build off a lot of what people did in the past, but it's mostly like new written content. And I wrote the guide content for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in the process of it for 7 Original, and so I've done like stuff like that. And it's always cool to see other people link to it and use that as an example, because like it's funny because when I'm writing it, I don't want to say I don't have readers in mind at all, but I always like write it as like a kind of for other editors, if anything, for other people to say like oh, well, you did good on this, I'd expand it this way. Or like, oh, well, maybe we could write this the thing better. Like, if anything, we're writing it amongst ourselves to say, how can we improve on this? Or like, how can we make the best version of this page? Because also, like, I'll just say, like, when I was writing Tifa's page, like, the thing I had in mind was I want people to come away from this page knowing exactly what makes this character work and why she's as good as she is. Like, that was a thing. I wanted people to come away with that. So when I was writing Aerith's page, like, I sent it to Drake at the time. I was like, do you approve of this? Like, did I do Aerith justice? Like, that kind of thing. Like, I really want people to come away understanding like all the complexities there, all the things that you'd missed there. Like, I basically, like, if you have a question, who is Tifa Lockhart? Then I want the page you're reading to answer that question. And it's funny because when I'm writing it at the time, I don't even have necessarily like a reader in mind. I have it so much as like, I'm doing this for other people to try and make the best version. And then when I see readers' reactions, that just makes it all the more gratifying, right? And I'm going to end this long tirade. I'm sorry about that, but just making one last point. Like, it's funny, when I was transcribing the script for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I thought no one would read that. I thought no one would care. I never thought anyone would care.
How did you think no one would read that?
That does nothing but list dialogue. And I was like, this has taken me a month or two to transcribe this game, and I'm only really doing it so we can reference it internally. Like, I'm only really doing it to make our jobs of writing the pages better. And then firstly, I come on Final Fantasy V, and then Daniel's here saying like, thanks for writing that. I was like, oh, okay, sweet. And then the second thing is I saw like, there was the little thing that, what are they called? KrupaCon? The KrupaCon did, right? Where they had the voice actors read the dialogue out. And I had the script page up there. As I was watching it, I'm like, you're using my script, aren't you?
You're using the script, aren't you?
Awesome.
And I was just like, you know, it brought like warm, fuzzy feelings to my heart, hearing like Brett Barron, who I like idolize a lot, read out the lines that
really
I transcribed. I was like, oh.
Look at this, guys. I mean, he's not joking. The entire script is here, right here, like from Enter the Reactor Grounds. And I mean, we even have like little upon walking past Barrett.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? Like we have that in here. This is incredible stuff. It's all you gotta do is type in Final Fantasy VII Remake script, and this will be the link that pops up. And you have it chaptered out as well.
Like Rick said, labor of love.
Yeah, I did the Final Fantasy VI. I did the Super NES script for Final Fantasy VI, which is easy because the ROM editor for it just lets you export it all as a text document.
He hated me for it.
I do have,
He hated
oh yeah, because it was just a lot of work. Like, it was just a lot of work. But then also I'm like, and there's also the Game Boy Advance script. I'm not doing that today. Like, Techno, you realize I'm not doing that for a while, if ever, because I'm not putting myself through that again.
I'll get to it eventually. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff for the 7 series to write first.
Yeah. And I'll also mention you having fun writing. The most one I had writing the Final Fantasy VI pages was that getting to do the character pages, because originally we did like I don't remember how they were structured before, but like we do dedicated pages for them now where, okay, here's Tara's page, and of course it's primarily about Final Fantasy VI, and there's a sub page for her other appearances, but we also have it where dedicated page for her gameplay. So I wrote like the dedicated gameplay page, and I'm like, okay, let's sit down, think about all the equipment options and ability options this character has. And how do I describe like what their purpose is in battle and what their options are, and like how you can use them effectively. So on the one hand, I got to do that, and related to that is each character under the profile section, you have appearance, personality, and abilities. So there's actually a lot of things like I had to look through the script to like read into things. Like, the one thing I noticed is when you actually sit back and analyze Edgar, he's a sneaky little bugger. Like, he had the chocobos ready to flee from Kefka. He's the one who infiltrates the thieves. He's got the 2-headed coin. Edgar is pretty clever and sneaky, and this is the king masquerading as a bandit to sneak into his own castle. It's almost audacious. And like, when you actually analyze it, Edgar's clever. And then I had to do the ability section. So I had to like look at all the spin-offs each character had been in and like, okay, so how do like they play, and like recognizing these characters do it, like have recurring attacks and they have recurring motifs behind them. Like in most of his spin-offs, like he does have, like most characters of course have iconic weapons these days in Final Fantasy. Edgar is much more. Edgar's never really had an iconic weapon. He has a sword in his artwork and he has a spear in Opera Omnia, but he's much more closely associated with his tools. And in a lot of spin-offs, he's a dedicated debuffer of some sort. So it was neat to look at between these different appearances of the characters and see this connective tissue in them, and then write the ability section to describe generally how they fight.
Right, and that's like dedicated gameplay pages are an idea that I kind of brought in. But that's the thing, like it's so fun when you're writing these pages to like analyze the games critically and like think about things that you would miss on a normal playthrough, and then get to share them with everyone else. Like that's why I find it so fun. Like for instance, like you brought up the abilities pages. When I was writing Tifa's page, like her abilities section, that was something we didn't have before, and it was interesting to think about. Okay, so I know what powers she has in gameplay. I know what moves she has, but how strong is she canonically?
Yeah.
Like, what is she really capable of? Like, I mean, okay, fine. I see that she can like summon a massive dolphin with an uppercut punch. And I see that she can like pick up a giant robot, spin it over her head, leap up into the air, and then throw it down on the ground.
Yeah.
Which is the coolest ability in Final Fantasy history. Don't at me. Like, I see that she has this power, but how strong is she really? Like, canonically.
Yeah, like Sabin, there's a big difference between, okay, he can use suplex on the Phantom Train versus in story, he's holding up a crumbling house. There's a big difference between those two things and how you can represent them.
Right, and it's cool to like think about it like so now that we separate lore and gameplay, it's cool to think about like how strong someone is in lore. But it's equally interesting to like theory craft all the different ways you would play the game and all the different ways like XYZ ability would help you, you know?
Yeah.
It's so cool writing about that. And then hearing the stuff that like we've like been able to share with everyone and other people have like noticed it. Like that's what makes the hobby so fun.
Yeah. This is really, really awesome. It's like the way you guys were describing it kind of reminded me of Death Battle. So like, you know what I mean? Like if you were trying to get Death Battle.
I have a story. All right. So there's a death battle between Tifa and Yang.
Oh boy.
I love Ruby. Right. I didn't know what it was at the time, but like when they were writing the stuff for Tifa's section, I noticed they brought up a bunch of stats for Tifa. You cannot find those stats on any other website. Because we hacked the game and found those stats. Like, we hacked the game and found those stats. So when I saw that bit, I'm like, you used us, didn't you? and I was like, that was just really cool. I mean, there was also like a bit of a problem after that death battle.
Yeah.
Like, we had a few people.
I can imagine.
Edit war. They tried to edit Tifa's page
because
we had to mention that she was in this death battle, and they tried to edit this page to like add a whole long paragraph about actually she should have won because XYZ. I'm like,
let me tell you why she should have won.
We don't get, like that's not our job is not to like post to like host your little like fan theories or fan complaints. Our job is just to say she was in this battle. So the quote unquote compromise was to not even say she'd won or not. We just said she's in, nothing else.
I'll just mention Death Battle because, of course, you know, everyone has their own fantasy Death Battle. I've like spent time. Who would be a good opponent for Terra if she was in Death Battle? And the best I could come up with, and it would not be a fair fight. I'll admit, Terra would get crushed. The best I could come up with is maybe Starfire from DC. But I'm like, even if you go with a specific
you're going
incarnation,
outside of Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
you're just okay.
I would say even within Final Fantasy, I mean, Lightning. You know,
I would say Lightning would win.
Final form, you know, Lightning.
I'd have to look on the Final Fantasy wiki a little bit more, but I'd say that I'd say Lightning would win.
I think Lightning would probably beat anybody.
Well, now I'm gonna have to go do a Dissidia quick battle where like Terra kicks the crap out of Lightning.
Talking final form Lightning.
first of all, I'll caution you that we haven't rewritten much of the 13 content just yet.
Mhm.
It's something that I'll get to eventually. Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just, I have a lot of 7 stuff to write first. The second
Yes.
thing I'll say is, like, as far as a death battle with Tara would go, I always thought that her perfect opponent would actually be Star-Lord, right? It's because they're both half god, right? And they have a they're
Oh, you
both
mean like
half-
MCU Star-Lord?
yeah,
Hmm.
MCU Star-Lord specifically.
Hmm.
Like, they're both like a half god, and that plays a lot
Yeah.
into
But-
their
So
characters learning.
but-
Oh, by the way, I'm not even fully human. And then
is that
like
Star-Lord before or after Ego gets killed? Because after Ego gets
before
killed,
Ego-
Star-Lord's just a human at that point.
Yeah.
right, that's true. Yeah,
But if we're
before
gonna-
he got killed.
Then again, it's Death Battle. Continuity is just like look at how they handle Link from Legend
It's
of
a
Zelda.
suggestion.
Mhm.
It's
No, I
not
didn't.
cannot.
Yeah, but we're getting off topic there. We're getting
Yeah.
off topic there.
Death Battle, great series.
Yeah,
love-
we love
yeah,
it.
Great
I want more Final Fantasy representation though.
Maybe
I
Final
wanna
Fan
see-
TV will do a death battle. What do you guys think?
Oh, hey, you know what? But first
Death,
death
battle,
battle.
series.
Mon-
I just can't do the animation, but hey, it would be a fun topic for sure.
Vaughn versus the main character from Final Fantasy 3.
Vaughn will always lose.
Yeah.
I'll
I
say
will
just
make it
one.
so.
I'll say just one more thing. Like I legitimately think this would be cool for Death Battle to do if you want Final Fantasy representation. Yeah, I don't know if the hosts have seen the Fate series, Fate Stay Night. Simply, if you know the series, Gilgamesh versus Noctis. I think that
Oh,
would be
not just
the perfect
Gilgamesh
battle.
versus Gilgamesh.
Well, no, because it's a whole thing. I'd have to get into like what Gilgamesh's power set is and how it contrasts Noctis and how his character contrasts Noctis. I'm not gonna get into that. That's a whole other thing. But I
Right.
think Gilgamesh versus Noctis would be a perfect for death battle, and I legit don't know who could win, but I'd love to see them do that.
Didn't
I'm done now.
Gladio take
I'm
down
done now.
Gilgamesh?
Ooh.
Yeah, and not the Fate Gilgamesh, but
Not
yeah.
the fake
Yeah,
one.
Yeah. And even at
But-
15, that wasn't Gilgamesh. I'm
I was
sorry.
sorry.
Like
Yeah,
with
like
15 didn't do Ultros properly. They did not do Gilgamesh
See,
properly.
the problem with Fate though is that if it's Fate's Gilgamesh, Noctis just has to go after his champion. He doesn't actually have to go after Gilgamesh. He just has to kill the human controlling Gilgamesh.
mm,
Well, that's the
That-
thing. Though.
that's
Well,
Gilgamesh's
I don't know
weakness.
if it's a spoilers. There isn't one. Like eventually, like Gilgamesh does not have a master. Like he's so powerful that he doesn't need one.
Hmm.
But he is
Yeah.
defeated.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know the whole continuity, but that's a different thing. But in power set, I think it could be a good fight. If
Yeah.
they want more Final Fantasy representation.
There would be a lot of fun fights to do. I think FFTV needs to start something here.
But
it
Noctis
just
is
has to
also a
be-
god. Another
Noctis,
Final
yeah, I was gonna
Fantasy
say
god.
Noctis versus Lightning would be the battle of the century.
Oh,
Like, who would
we
win that?
used to have a version of Death Battles on the
I was just
wiki,
thinking that.
and then we just sort of like
Yeah.
we ran it for like several years amongst our own community, but then we just sort of like ran out of ideas for it.
Yeah. And I'll say like we did like a big tournament too, where it was just like community voting. Vivi from Final Fantasy IX won the first one. Terra won the second one. And then there was actually website drama because I don't remember it fully and I'm not gonna get into it, but let's just say there was questioning of the legitimacy of some votes and questioning the judgment of people who decided that.
Oh,
So that
yeah.
was like it was a thing. We're
I
arguing,
would
and
say,
in
like-
hindsight, it's like we're arguing over who won a popularity contest between Terra and Vivi.
Right.
We take these things seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we
The Grand Drizzlers, thank
Dude.
you so much for the follow.
if we do another one of those tournaments, like it'll be probably in a few years,
Yeah.
most likely.
Yeah.
Like when there are more games that are out.
yeah,
Like 16 might have some interesting things. Like
yeah.
yeah. 16 is a game that I'm kind of like I'm excited for, but like it's a tepid kind of excitement. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's the
oh, I'm
same.
gonna
Like
play.
everyone watched the trailer and it's like this just looks so cool, and I'm like, I see a generic fantasy game. Like I
Hmm.
don't hate it, but I'm not hyped.
Right. It's like the thing with 16 for me is like I know I'm gonna like it, so it's less interesting to me.
Yeah, like
Like-
it'll probably be fine. I don't think any Final Fantasy game, at least the main numbered ones, I don't think any of them are bad. Some are definitely less good, but
Mm.
none of them are bad. So I know 16, it's gonna come out, it's gonna
Yeah.
be fine, but is it gonna be the best thing ever? I don't know. I've seen a
With
trailer.
the case of 16, it's like I know that I'm gonna like it because Yoshi P does such good work with
Yes.
16.
That's a reason to get
There's
hyped.
no
I'll
way for
concede.
it to be bad. So, but it's just like it's a little less interesting to me personally. So that's why I don't think I'm gonna be writing the 16 content, but I know I'm gonna like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like 16 will be an interesting one to see where that goes. when it comes
I'm
out.
really excited for 16. Yeah, I'm really excited just because I think it's going to be rated M, and I'm excited for a rated M Final Fantasy.
We've already had one.
Huh?
It
Oh
was
yeah, well,
Type
type 0. Yes.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy 16 it's a different story. I feel like it's
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
completely new territory for the story.
yeah.
Yeah.
While
I'm
still-
excited to see it.
While
can
still
go
being
really
like
dark.
a fantasy setting that's more similar to the old games, it's like, yeah, I see what you mean. Like, I'm interested and excited for 16. It's just I know that I'm gonna like it, so
Yeah.
it just doesn't become as interesting.
It doesn't. Yeah, I'm gonna love it anyway.
Yeah,
I'm
like
exci-
with
I
7
would love to
Remake,
have
I'm like,
seen-
I think I'm gonna like it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Like,
I would have loved to have seen Remake, like Final Fantasy 7 Remake, rated M cut. I just would have loved to see that game rated M. I don't
Right.
know.
The Dawn Corneo scene we couldn't show you.
Yeah, well, we couldn't show you at Walmart. Or the
bag.
It's
Hopefully
I'm legitimately surprised that they like I knew of course Walmart that's gonna be, shall we say, some mature content. I didn't expect the hand massages.
Dude, that was
And that's
that was
like
great.
you're really pushing what you can get
They left
away
it.
with here. At what point do we dispense with pretense and up the age rating?
well, they even did that with the original game. There's a whole like censored
Yeah.
part of the game that was just cut.
Yeah, but even then, like with the change in art style, you could like hint at something like that in the original game. You couldn't do it with this. Like I'm pretty sure at that some point they haven't have Honeybee in. Like, isn't there like a scene where like one of the bodybuilders is like straddling on top of Cloud?
Wookie bag.
Yeah, they could not do that in Remake. They could not do that. That would get the age rating increased.
When Mookie showed up in our playthrough, that's the voice that's the voice I gave him. It was just, oh, Mookie bag, here we go. Wink, squeeze, squeeze. Oh man.
Oh no,
guys,
we started an argument in the Twitch comments.
Oh, have we?
Death
We're
battle.
talking about Noctis versus Lightning, right?
Yeah.
Terra beats
Lightning,
them both. How about that?
Who does? Terra
Terra
beats
beats
both.
them both.
Well, I mean, this is such a great conversation that I would love to have. I think we should have a Final Fantasy tournament, battle tournament. We might as well start at the Final Four because we know that Lightning, Terra, Noctis, and
Gilgamesh.
Vaughn.
I was gonna stick with Vaughn. Lunith. They're and Lunith. And we're no, I was sticking to main characters like Final Fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be so fun to have this conversation because Starfire, I'm with you, and Lightning did take down a god. I'm still reading.
So did Terra.
Noctis I feel like Noctis did too, with Bahamut.
Yeah.
So
Like, that's the
Bahamut-
thing. Like, it's like
the
Final
god.
Fantasy protagonist. Raise your hand if you've killed a god.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
How many?
Let's not forget that Tidus is a dream, so technically he can't be.
Yeah,
beat,
yes.
Right. So
Oh,
like
sorry.
he's just gonna. Oh, okay. I see what you did. Yeah.
Spoiler alert, but yeah.
Right.
If you haven't played Final Fantasy X in the last
Yeah,
20
we should be
years,
good. We should be good. Well, Lightning is the strongest. Didn't they? I don't know if they officially went with that, but Lightning is she's definitely the
Orange
strongest.
best.
I love.
He's already
Lightning, by
dead.
the
You
way.
can't kill him again.
Right?
I was actually I'm one of the few that actually enjoyed Final Fantasy 13. So
I'll defend it. It had its flaws, but I'll defend it.
Yeah, so here's the thing with
I
13.
enjoyed
Like, I think like with 13, like and I haven't played it recently enough to have much of my own opinion on it, but I think with 13, like the unfortunate result of what happened with 13 is that like the fan base was a little like the fan base was really torn after 13. It was a game where you really had to take a side. Like as much as people like to say 15 was divisive or 7 Remake was divisive, and don't get me wrong, those games have their detractors. But with 13, it was so toxic. It was like I think the best point of comparison is like a Star Wars after Episode 8.
Like
it was so bitterly divided.
Yeah,
and, like it was.
And, like I was in the fan base at that time, and like people were saying this could be the game that kills the franchise, and others were saying this
there
is
was
the
a
best
lot of
game
talks.
since 7.
There was
and,
talk
like,
about there should never be any more Japanese RPGs. They're like, we're done.
Yeah, like and I'm like
done. Just leave it over to the West. And it was really hyperbolic and really like. So like, regardless of what you thought of 13, and I think
I enjoyed it. Didn't say I liked it a lot.
What little I know of 13, like and how well it holds up, I think like 13 is a commendable game that definitely had its vision and it's stuck with it. Like I mean, I can't bring myself to hate 13. Like
I don't hate it. I actually liked what they were setting up with the story of 13. And I know this is like we're getting way off of the Final Fantasy 6, but I liked what they set up with the story of 13, defying the Lassie, the Fal'Cie, and all this other stuff. Really cool stuff. They built a world. They just didn't build the game. You know what I mean?
I think like a good term for 13 and 15. Maybe if this is the right term, hot garbage. You know, is it good? No. Is it good?
Is this a good term?
Do I like it? Yes, I like it. Is it good?
Is this a good term? Hot garbage.
Like, the thing,
that's what I've heard for things like that, where it's not like I can't say it's good, but I do enjoy it.
Like 15 is in a state of where like I feel like if that was developed more and had more time on it, that would be among the better games. But as it is, it's like it's not a bad game. It just doesn't hold up to the quality that we've come to expect from Final Fantasy, the main series.
So just to clarify on stream here, Vincent Graymore has brought up from thegamer.com that Square Enix confirmed Lightning is the strongest character in Final Fantasy, published November 13th, 2018. So that was after Final Fantasy 15. So there,
I don't know about that, considering Aerith becomes kind of a goddess. Like, but then again, I guess it's not a main
god.
I also found
something. I was a demigod.
I also found something saying from Square Enix that Chaos, the final boss from the very first Final Fantasy, is the strongest character in the Final Fantasy franchise. And I kicked his ass with one white mage. So I don't know. I don't
this is
know.
where we get into gameplay and story segregation here.
Right.
He's like, look, I don't know. I beat him with one white mage.
Kefka's the god of magic, and Terra dual wielding with the offering killed him in one turn. So who's the real god here?
Vaughn has a 6-pack.
Vaughn
has an 8-pack.
8-pack.
He has a sketch of an 8-pack.
Like,
he has the sketch.
Tifa has a 6. Oh, right. Well, Tifa has abs. It's way harder to get abs on a girl.
That's true.
I know this because I'm a personal trainer.
Tifa versus Sabin. Are we going?
Tifa versus Sabin? Oh, it's Tifa.
Tifa.
I'm surprised. Like you said, like you love Sabin. Okay.
I love Sabin. Sabin's great. He's my favorite in 6, aside from Kefka. But Tifa beats him. And my argument is simply this. Sabin can suplex a train. Very impressive. Very cool skill to have.
Very impressive, right? It is.
Not something anyone can do randomly. Tifa can suplex something bigger than a train, right? With a single hand, spin it over her head, leap up in the air with it, and then throw it back down.
But I will raise you. But I will raise you if we do a remake of Final Fantasy VI, and that happens in a cutscene. Sabin lifted a suplex the train canonically. Not in gameplay.
That's canonical. And when that 6 remake comes out, we'll be able to confirm which is stronger or not.
Yeah,
I love it.
Square Enix, these are questions we need answered. This is why you have to remake this game.
Yeah, see, that's the most important reason to remake 6. It's not to do with like
just remake 7, suplexing the train, and that's fine.
Like bringing the game to a new audience. We don't care about that. We just want to know how strong Serpent really is and who'd win in a death battle. That's what we need.
Oh my god! If like the first teaser trailer that they would bring out for Final Fantasy VI Remake would have to have like a little glimpse.
Just end with like the train coming at Sabin and
train.
Sabin bracing himself and end the trailer there.
Yeah,
and you know it's coming. You know it's coming.
Exactly.
Oh man, this was a really fun topic. Thank you guys so much for jumping on here and talking. Do you have any closing thoughts before we end this out, or any closing thoughts? I mean, I love that this was such a passionate topic that all I had to say was basically like, hey, Drakey C and Techno Obliterated, Final Fantasy VI Remake. And then just and just kick back and listen, because it was you guys really.
I think like I agree with that. I think definitely this applies to all fandoms in general, but definitely like with Final Fantasy, I think it's so much more fun to talk about what you love than what you didn't love.
Yes,
exactly.
Like, it's so much more fun, but also more productive to have conversations like that. I mean, and I don't even hate Final Fantasy VIII or anything like that, but you look at a lot of Final Fantasy VIII conversations, and there are so many people with like just really negative things to say about it.
Yeah.
And I just think like me having like a podcast where I bring up criticisms or like defenses of Final Fantasy VIII is just not that interesting to me.
Yeah.
But talking about my favorite game in the series and my second favorite game of all time and why I think more people should discover that is just, just a vastly more productive topic, I think. Like, it's always like, because, I mean, if we were to talk Final Fantasy VIII and say, oh, the game sucks or whatever, like, and I'm not even taking that stance personally, because I'm kind of like so on it. Like, I mean, like, that would just be so much less interesting, because it's like, no one's gonna come away from that thinking, wow, I hate the game more.
Yeah.
Or, wow, I love the game more. Or wow, I used to love the game and now I hate it. Like, no one's gonna come away like that. But at least with 6, I can tell you guys why 6 is so great and why I think more people should discover it and why I really love it as a time. So I really love conversations like these where we can just talk about what we love rather than what we didn't love.
Yeah.
That's my first
well
closing
said.
thought. I had another, but I don't want to talk for too long. So
it's
Drake,
okay. Okay, I'm just thinking like
8
specifically, I'll just say, again, I don't think any of the main Final Fantasy games are bad. I don't. But if you want me to pick the one that is least good, it probably would be 8. But even then, there are things in 8 I love. I haven't played Final
8 minus 5. 8 I love that, Vinny.
But like, even in Final Fantasy 8, like, there's things I like I really think, like, honestly, I think they give Sypha one of the best rival. Like, he's one of the, when you actually analyze his backstory and his motivations, I think he's one of the best written rival characters in the series. Because like, it's hinted at in the game and it confirmed in Ultimania, and Opera Omnia confirmed it. The reason Sypha wields a gunblade and wanted to be a sorceress knight is because of Laguna and the movie he made. And like in Opera Omnia, they have Sypha meeting Laguna and fanboying over him. But it's also like, but Squall's implicit dad inspired his arch rival on the path that would lead him to be his arch rival, and that's interesting. So like, even with Final Fantasy VIII, if I think it's the least good, I want to emphasize not bad, least good, there's still things to enjoy in it, and you can still discuss it and analyze it and realize things that make you think things about the game, make you appreciate parts of it more.
Absolutely. I actually really like Final Fantasy VIII. That's it's one of those nostalgic things for me, just because I played 7 and then 8 and then 9.
Triple triad.
And just Final Fantasy VIII was just, I love the story of it. I love the love story that they went with. So I mean, I can say that a Final Fantasy VIII special will probably happen one day.
I'll also say for Final Fantasy VIII quickly, the graphics. You look Final Fantasy VII was cool. It looks like crap compared to Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII looks great for its time. Not even for its time. I think it looks great. And
even me as someone where like I didn't dislike 8, but it didn't resonate with me hugely. It's way more interesting for me to hear someone who did like 8 talk about why 8 is so great and why 8 worked well for them. And
I love 8.
Something that I hadn't seen before than it is for me to watch someone like make a massive rant about how 8 sucks. Like
we've had that years ago, and
I think where it comes down to when it comes to the criticism of Final Fantasy, like I guess my stand on it is that if you have criticisms of especially like a recent Final Fantasy, then cool, let's hear your recent Final Fantasy criticisms. I want to talk about them, but you have to be open-minded. If you're stuck on like, oh, this game sucks and I'll never like it, then it's like, okay, well,
why are we talking to you then?
That, if you have a content creator who's like, like this game really disappointed me, I'll raise my hand on that one too, because like I had I think I did a unfiltered thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it was just kind of like to get those thoughts out there and then see if anybody resonated with those thoughts. But the bottom line of that is that, hey, here's my concerns, here's my my fears, rather than this game is a freaking disaster. And like, if you're gonna trash it, then don't make the content. Like, don't say something if you don't have anything good to say. Don't say it at all.
Right.
And then but if you're gonna go back to like Final Fantasy VIII and then do an entire video or write an entire article about like how the game sucks, it's like, okay, that game came out in like 98, 90. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm glad you went back there.
I think that's like a good way of looking at it. Like, definitely, like, so my things would be like, I much prefer like positive content over like overly negative ones.
Yes, exactly.
I love criticism when it comes from a constructive place of like, hey, I like this, let's make it better, as opposed to like a video where it's like, I didn't like this and no one else should like this.
Yeah,
that's where I draw the line too.
Yeah,
I much prefer the constructive like angles of it, because there are like plenty of like areas where you can criticize 7 Remake on.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, if you didn't like it, then you could make. I would say if you didn't like it, you could make your video and just express that you didn't like it, and it wasn't for you. But you don't have to tell somebody that if you like this, then you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, so if you can say that, if you can say like Final Fantasy VII Remake didn't work for you and you're going to move on from it, then that's
100%.
Yeah.
100% okay.
The third caveat is don't make it personal attacks.
Yeah.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
Like the worst.
This is a topic that
on the internet.
Yeah, this is a topic that we bring up because you guys have to deal with this a lot with the Final Fantasy Wiki.
I was actually worried about this very recently. If I guess maybe make this public. I think Techno knows what I'm talking about. There's the Final Fantasy. They released the Ultimanias in English finally as the archive, and I had to research this and ask for scans, and I felt I was actually afraid to edit the wiki this. I'm like, please don't start something. I don't want to do this. The English Ultimania archive says that when Tifa is in Cloud's subconscious, they confirm they love each other, and explicitly says love. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. Oh, and like I had to look up the original page, because the Ultimania archive page was taken from the 10th anniversary Ultimania. So like I had to get the original scan and ask, please translate this and what it says and make sure I understand this correctly. They didn't say it in the original Japanese. The original Japanese scan of the page did not say they love each other. It said Tifa realized Cloud had a crush on her as a kid. But the English translation says they love each other now. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make any assumptions about the translator, if it's a personal bias or if they just did a crummy job or what. But if a canon source is saying that they love each other, we kind of have an obligation to say that.
Right, that's the thing.
And now we're dealing with a canonical source saying that Cloud and Tifa love each other. Oh no.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
Oh no. Not include information like that. But you know that as soon as you do, you'll get a ton of people like at you who are like, oh, how dare you confirm this? Clarith is the only true one.
Exactly.
Or is the only true one.
And that's
Like,
why
that's the thing.
we had a discussion. We just staff privately had a discussion. If we're gonna add this information, we need to do damage control and cover it carefully because this could
Right.
start something. How do we
Yeah.
present this information? And how do we preemptively deal with people as best we can? How do we preemptively deal with people
See-
who are gonna argue about it?
See,
Because it's
I
gonna
see it.
happen.
I see it as like, the word love can be flexible in certain aspects because like, I say I love a lot of things. I say I love
Mhm.
my dog, I love my sister, I love my family, I love my girlfriend,
I love
Uh,
Final Fantasy.
I love Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Those loves, it's all love, but different loves,
Mhm.
Right.
So like in the translation, it could say, they love each other, but like I love a lot of my friends who are guys. I'm not in
Yeah.
love with them, but I love my friends,
Love you
you
too,
know,
man.
But then
and
in
I
come the
know my
Claudie
friends
shippers
love
like,
me.
no, they mean romance. And that's why we don't want to. We didn't want to deal with
was-
that.
But like if it didn't explicitly say like they love each other and now want to get married and have kids, like that seems like a
Yeah.
more specific kind of love. But when you just leave it up to the word love, then I don't think it's a definitive term in that aspect.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't really come at you guys or change the way they think.
Oh yeah, and I agree completely. I hear you, but on the other hand,
Yeah.
this is perhaps one of the most infamously debated love triangles in all of fiction.
Mhm.
True.
So this like I'm like if I don't know how widely known it was that the English versions explicitly said they love each other, but I'm like if we put it on the wiki, people are gonna see it
Mm.
and like they're gonna use it and they're
Yeah.
gonna come back to wiki because we have it. And even if it's not us, they're gonna come at us of like it's not valid if it's not the original. You shouldn't cover it, or its translation's invalid. And even if people don't like come at the wiki, they're gonna use it in their own discussions about the love triangle. And it's
Mhm.
like I said, it's like, what am I unleashing if I add this to the wiki?
Right.
That's
It
gotta be
was
like
both
so
fascinating-
difficult to hit publish.
Yes,
was
it
both
really did.
fascinating and really challenging writing a lot of the stuff for like Tifa especially, like because one of the core things about Tifa is, especially with a lot of her dialogue, is that like so much is left unsaid. Like there's so much to there. Like you can read a lot of her dialogue 5 different ways, and if you try and like understand her mindset and how she's thinking, like it's just so it was both challenging and difficult picking out certain lines of dialogue where I'm like, okay, what's she thinking here, or what does this mean, or what does this play into? Like,
Yeah.
and so for example, like one bit is like in the original game when you go on the date with Tifa and she hints to like, oh, there's something I've wanted to tell you but I can't, like Eric would be able to tell you but I can't.
Yeah.
And then the obvious, like the surface level interpretation that a lot of people go with is she just wants to tell him that she's fallen in love with him. And that's the surface level interpretation. But it might not actually be that at all. Like it might just be, she wants to tell him, hey, by the way, all your memories are fake. Like the Nibelheim incident didn't happen the way you did. Like, and I've been concealing this from you the whole time. I just don't know how to say it. So it's just like moments like that where like when I was writing a page, it was challenging to think like, what does she mean here? Or what does she not mean here? And how do I like both read into what she's trying to say, but also like not try and put my interpretation on it. So yeah, so stuff like that is like
I'll say bring it back to Final Fantasy VI. I actually ended up to put that with of all characters Emperor Gestal, because like he has such little screen time in Final Fantasy VI. Like he is like such a non-presence, but when you actually analyze the Empire's actions and the orders he gives, there's actually a lot you can read into his character, and he does you're like, yeah, he doesn't have a lot of screen time and he's not exactly a complex character, but you can see that this is a ruthless, brutal, ambitious man. He uses people, he exploits people, he has no hesitation about the atrocities the Empire has committed. He clearly doesn't feel any guilt about them afterwards. So like he has, like you see so little of Emperor Gestal, but there's a lot you can read into his actions just by analyzing the story.
Right. And that's
Mm.
what you guys have to do when you come up with the personality tab of the characters.
Yeah.
Wow.
And those are fun to write, but
They are,
it
but
can be very challenging. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah,
you'll notice
exactly.
there are a lot of footnotes in like Tifa's page because I'm like, I have so much to say, but I have to cram it into such small spaces. So that was also another challenging part. But anyway, my other final point, final thought will be, Vinny, congratulations in defeating Midgard and succeeding
yes.
where Snoop Dogg failed.
It's
Everyone check out Snoop Dogg plays Final Fantasy
I'm
7.
not salty at that at all.
Everyone check out Snoop Dogg plays Final Fantasy 7. I don't know if I'm ever gonna make any other videos.
Dude, that's on your YouTube, right?
That's on my
Yeah.
YouTube. I don't know if
Techno,
I'm ever gonna
you
make
want
any
to
others,
you want to
but
mention YouTube? I'll Final Fan TV's people know this. I do like a monthly lore of Final Fantasy thing where I analyze creatures, and I'm actually appropriate for Final Fantasy VI. Next Friday I'll be debuting Ultros and Typhon, and it's like I like I'm lucky to get a couple hundred views, if that, after months. And then Techno does his little meme thing, which he needed my help to make, I'll note. And it's like he gets hundreds of thousands of views, and it's like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing?
like,
What's wrong?
but like the thing I'll say with that is like, yeah, definitely guys check out Drakey C's channel. He does like really fantastic work there.
Thank you.
Like definitely deserves the recognition, right? So as far as stuff to expect from us going forward, you can expect me to continue. I'm going to be writing for Intergrade when it comes out. I'm going to eventually rewrite the whole 7 series, and then which game I do next, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll do other YouTube videos, I don't know. Like the first one was fun, but we'll
really
and like Drake and I have a YouTube series we had planned, which I think we'll keep under wraps.
Yeah. I actually was looking at the script for that other day, tightening up some of the bits in that, and I do want to do that. I'll say, like, I have plans to take a hiatus from lore Final Fantasy in the summer, because there's another video I want to do that I've really, like, it's been on my mind for a long time, but it's especially been on my mind after the last year. And let's just say it's been on my mind after the game I've been playing, that I want to do a big video like my Final Fantasy VI trivia. And I mentioned this idea to Techno that we like joking about, and Techno's like, let's actually do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, we could, if we can figure out how to do it. It shouldn't be that difficult. So fun things in the future for us.
Yeah, so I'll leave you to speculate as to what we have planned in future, but I'm really excited for it. And last thing, I can't promise this, but I'm hoping to do it. I am hoping to, in the vein of Suno mods, I'm hoping to have a fully voiced Final Fantasy VI mod. And
yeah, that's an ambitious one.
That is an ambitious one. Can't promise anything yet, but those are the things that I have in the works right now.
Make sure you pick a good voice actor for Ultros.
Of course.
Yeah. I'll toss out, just as a one-off joke, and collecting footage and editing a video for him. I found his appearance in World of Final Fantasy. Terra goes looking for a monster that's causing trouble, finds Ultros, and Ultros is like, well, I'll help you find it. And like they do like a couple fade outs where like Terra's like, where are you leading me? And Ultros says, I was just leading you. I think this is exactly how he says it. I was just leading you someplace more private so we could have some fun together. And I'm like, you're not even trying to be subtle about this. Ultros and Square Enix, you have abandoned subtlety here. You're just leading into the implications here. Wow.
It makes so much sense for Terra's character, because that is the kind of thing that would go over her head completely.
Yeah, when they go into the battle and the two main characters of the game pop up, they're like, I can't believe Terra trusted this guy. Well, that's the kind of person she is.
All right, well, and then Vinny, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just that I said it on the stream yesterday. I might stream some grinding today after this is over. After I eat something, I might stream some level grinding, and I'm also probably going to stream a continuation of the story Monday night.
Nice. Awesome. For my closing thoughts, just to touch on what Vincent Graymore said in the chat. Just want to say that you said here we have shipping things. Yes. So I posted on Twitter a few days ago, and I said, man, I've seen a lot of people trashing people who ship, but I haven't seen people who are shipping trashing those. You know what I mean? I haven't seen it the other way around. So like if I've seen a lot of people who are like Cloud and Aerith and they love it and they just go love, but I've never seen like a Clarith or whatever just trash a Clouty. You know
I'll
what I mean?
say
But
there
you
was
guys
a-
obviously have experience.
I'll just say the one thing, like this is a whole other thing, but I did see it was like a couple of weeks ago, and I think what set it off was, shall we say, there's no tactful way to say it, one of the shooting incidents in the United States. And the reason that what I saw that I think, because I think this set it off, is apparently Techno said this is the case, or at least partially, as far as the wall market sequence goes. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, Tifa is coded as an East Asian character and Aerith is coded as a Western character.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So suddenly
makes
you're
sense.
bringing a racism angle into the shipping war. And with what happened towards the end of March, I believe it was, I think that's maybe what triggered it. But yeah, I was seeing a lot of, I saw people saying, if you support this ship or if you don't support this ship, you are a racist.
Oh wow, Jesus.
Yeah,
Well, see,
I mean,
Yeah. That's a whole other thing, I know. But like,
it's
yeah,
a little, I don't know.
it was bad for a week or so there.
Huh.
Really
I mean,
got
I don't
bad.
know. I mean, I think let people have their ships. That they
Exactly.
like.
I see it all
Like,
the time.
Exactly.
All over my feed.
I'll just say I ship Aerith and Tifa, right? I ship.
Hey, the
like,
triangle has to be complete. You know what I mean?
I
It's-
got
love
famous
triangle has
for
to be.
writing a Cloud and Terror to Cydia fan fiction. And
Yeah,
I've actually,
like-
there's people who still remember that 10 years later, which is
Like, I
amazing
mean,
to me.
I understand the arguments from canonicity, for instance. If I've heard some very, very compelling cases for Cloud and Tifa. I've heard some decent cases for Cloud and Aerith. I just say I think let people enjoy their game.
Yeah.
And let people
Yeah.
enjoy their shit.
Yeah. Like of all
Exactly.
things
That's
to
why
be
I-
hateful over, it's shipping.
Well, we had a whole ass page on it.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
did
that-
once. We
that's
had a whole
wild.
forum mocking it once. We're like, reasons, evidence for Cloud and Tifa, as evidence for Cloud and Aerith, evidence for Cloud and Yuffie, evidence for Cloud and Sephiroth, evidence
Jesus.
for Cloud and Squall,
It's just
Cloud and
like, leave it
Sora.
alone.
And
It
it
was
went
so
so
bad.
ridiculous. Yes, there was a page that included Sephiroth, Rufus, Squall, and then Sora from Kingdom Hearts. Because it was just a parody page, and it was we nuked it because it was just ridiculous. But we also had a serious version that was much less fun.
I think
Yeah,
we're
those are
gonna
terrible.
do a podcast just on shipping. It's gonna be great. I can't wait. I
Oh,
wanna
no.
see what happens, you know?
That's a Pandora's
just-
box.
Let's open Pandora's box and see what happens. We'll do a whole entire podcast on Final
That's your
Fantasy
death.
VII
That's your
shipping.
death battle.
That's it.
Thing right
That's
there.
your death battle right there.
The Cloud and Tifa shippers versus the Cloud and Aerith shippers.
There's your
We'll
death
settle this
battle.
in the streets.
Let's get Steffi to make a render for it.
Oh yes. Yes, exactly. All right. This has been an absolutely fantastic time. I'm just checking to see if Chad had anything to say. Thank you guys. Any new followers today? The Grand Drizzler, thank you so much for following. I appreciate that. And Starfire, thanks for keeping up in the chat, as well as Vincent Graymore. This has been a great time celebrating Final Fantasy VI and why that game deserves to be remade. And then, of course, you know, you can't help it, but we veer off sometimes at the end.
Yeah.
You can't help it.
And
But yeah,
if we never do get a remake of Final Fantasy VI, at least we modded it with ponies. So, you know.
yeah, that's true. You did that. Here.
I wasn't sure if they would ever come up. I'll just
I
say
didn't know, man.
it's a thing that exists. I did. I modded Final Fantasy VI to have my.
That's
little
some
pony
pretty good
characters.
gameplay changes as well. That's some pretty damn good gameplay fixes in that one.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Starfire, thank
I was
you.
going to do it itself, but I never got around to it. Too much time.
All right, guys. Well, as a closing thought, just a little bit of housekeeping for Final Fan TV. Coming up next week, we have Hironobu Sakaguchi
Man
going to
himself.
be on the freaking show. This
Fantasy
will not
Daddy.
be. the daddy of Final Fantasy. We will not be able to do it live. We're still in talks to see if we can even use the video footage, but if we can use the video footage, we will debut it right here on Twitch. And if we can't use the the video footage, we will talk about it right here on Twitch on Saturday next week. And yeah, super exciting stuff, as that is obviously a very important person to not only Final Fantasy but to us personally.
That's the gold chocobo right there.
That's the gold chocobo, man. Oh man, yeah, it's just unbelievable that this actually. I keep saying potentially happen because I'm never certain until it happens. But
Yeah,
we have it secured. We have a date locked in. So very excited about that. So look forward to that next week on Final Fan TV. And this week, thank you so much to Techno Obliterator and Drakey C of the Final Fantasy Wiki. Please, once again, if you're watching this, please drop a thank you on their Twitter. I have their Twitter handles right here on the. Techno didn't have one, but if you go to the @FFWiki, just say thank you.
We do genuinely just like thank yous. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Starfire says thank you right here in the chat, guys. And until next time, and maybe even a little bit later when Vinny streams the Materia Lockdown Challenge, maybe he'll do some level grinding right here on Twitch. But until then, Vinny, thank you so much for joining me for this one as well.
Always a pleasure.
All right, guys. I am the warrior of hype, and I'll see you next time.